innocent gestures or cries for help? What are some signs that somebody has a dark past? When they don't ask for favors or help, ever. Lack of trust. No trust falls, no matter the person. They don't like it when people get them something, and they don't like being the center of attention. Their heart may be racing, but their face stays calm. When they're not disappointed when something bad happens, they accept it and keep moving. They hate threats. My sister's 6-year-old friend came for a visit. She was a foster kid placed with some church friends of ours. When she got to our house, my dad told them they could grab some snacks from the pantry. Then, every 20 or so minutes, for 4+ hours, she'd go to our fridge or pantry, open the door, look like she was searching for something, close the door, and go back and play. When she left, my dad found stashes of snacks under my sister's bed that she had put there. Her foster parents had told my dad that that could happen, so he wasn't surprised. But I remember kind of yelling at her to stop opening the fridge, and my dad taking me aside and explaining why she was doing this. Now, this is the part that still makes my heart break and my blood boil. Since age 3, she'd been living out of a car with her medicated-up mum and a brother who couldn't have been 2 years old. When they finally stayed long enough in one area for child protection services to become aware of the situation, she was 5. Her mum would disappear for days and leave them in the car by themselves. This little girl, at age 6, had such a strong food scarcity trauma that her survival instincts was to check for food every 20 minutes at a stranger's house. Now, if you've made it this far, I do have some good news. That girl and her brother were adopted by that foster family shortly after and have grown up relatively well, but I'll never forget the survival instincts present in that girl's eyes. Disproportionate reactions. Their reactions to most things are normal or even low-key. But occasionally they have a huge response to something minor. It's a key sign of trauma. Being the nicest person ever. Of all the people I know, the nicest and most thoughtful or caring are usually the ones who've been through some stuff. One is a Syrian who saw his brother getting killed by a militia. Still, he's probably the most nice man I've ever met, always ready to listen or help people even if their problems are like nothing compared to what he endured. Their behavior is either that or the opposite, I suppose, depending on whatever was the most effective way of evading trouble in that tough time of their life. Or maybe the nice thing is just a very well-maintained veneer to cover up how they're really feeling about this. It's a real sad personal story right there. They always seem to wait for bad things to happen and can't imagine a good or normal outcome. I mean, always expect the worst. You're either always right or you're pleasantly surprised. Paying very close attention to people's expressions and body languages, mostly to see if they're annoyed or angry. They also underreact to things and over-explain things that probably seem inconsequential to most. The first part is not wanting to set someone off. In tandem with this, most of them underreact because any expressions of unhappiness or anything that can be perceived as mostly negative usually get taken as an invitation to be unloaded upon or have someone upset displace their anger, and then you end up the target of a tirade. A lot of people, myself included, over-explain things because it's a defense mechanism in anticipation of being yelled at or being very harshly criticized because the other person tries to pin the blame on you, even for things out of your control, which is why one over-explains. Also, apologizing too much, and at least for me, not being able to joke. People constantly point out that I take everything so seriously or that I don't laugh or joke well. It's because I've had moments where someone said something so ridiculous and illogical, I think it must be a joke. But they weren't joking and got quite mad, so from then on, I simply took everything seriously and at face value, because on the off chance it wasn't meant to be a joke, I'd at least not be yelled at. It's quite scary as a child when you're told something that sounds absurd, you think it must be for comedic value and then react in that way, but then it's just hours of berating later. It's like walking into an ambush. You just learn not to risk it. People who've been through some stuff are reading these replies and realizing for the first time what their giveaways were this whole time. Unusually bad memory for the kind of person they are. It affects my attention and information retaining abilities. Progress is slow towards a normal memory. It's taken me like 10-ish years to be able to actually feel more like a functioning adult and less like a snail in my mental capacity. I couldn't hang on to any information besides what I needed to pass school tests and trauma. Regaining or repairing your memory takes a lot of time, much like the healing process takes a lot of time. You had to tell your friends. Get them to understand that sometimes experiences won't stick with you even if you paid attention and enjoyed it. It's similar to depression, where it's overwhelmingly discouraging and you can't put down an exact source of your issue. Accepting that makes moving forward a lot easier since you'll spend a lot of time beating yourself up over not having a tangible source of your issue and more energy to try your best since that's all you can really do. When you see someone deal with something extremely emotionally damaging or physically painful and they act like they don't even notice it, like nothing's changed. When you see that you know they've seen the worst and nothing is going to get to them. My buddy came back from deployment this way. Zero emotion left after that experience. His wife left with his kids and he just acted like he'd never had them in his life at all. His mum died maybe a year later and he didn't even respond to it. Just kept his routine of drinking until he fell asleep. Sadly, his story ended the way many like his do, and he took action to no longer be alive anymore. They have advice, good advice, for people who've just experienced trauma, or for how to handle oddly specific and messed up situations. When nothing shocks them, I had a near-death experience and it put in perspective what actually mattered to me in my life and what didn't. I used to be easily embarrassed by a lot of things and worry about what people thought of me. But embarrassment means that someone has seen or heard something about you that you didn't want them to, and that will spread into people's opinion in the future. The thing is, if you're dead, you don't have a future. So at that moment, I thought to myself how stupid I was to care about those things. I wished I'd spent that time and energy on the people I love or the things I wanted to do instead. After that experience, though I have a future now, I find it pretty hard to be embarrassed by most things. And if I do feel it, no way in hell would I let it stop me from doing what I need to for the people I love or myself. Ironically, after gaining that mentality, people started asking me how I could be so confident sometimes. But it's not that I'm confident, I just have things more important to me than being worried about embarrassment. Thinking you're telling a fun childhood or military or whatever anecdote or story and looking up to realize from your friends' faces and shocked silences that it is indeed not a fun story and it's actually pretty effed up. Yep. True. I'm a paramedic. People always ask, what's the worst thing you've seen? I used to just tell some slightly gross story to appease them, and now I tell them stories that give me the nightmares. It shuts them up and I get some free therapy. Win-win. Not wanting to bring up anything from their past. If they're super independent because they learned not to rely on anybody. Reacting to things inappropriately, either in scale or in nature. They'll overreact or underreact, or they'll do things like laugh, unironically, at awful things. One example is a friend laughing and saying, "It isn't a proper Thanksgiving unless someone pulls a knife," and then explains his drunken dad holding a knife towards him while angrily admonishing him about something. Humans are good rationalizers. If we're frequently exposed to awful things, those things become normal. Having to parent themselves when young or raise their siblings. If they don't have children but they're really good with them. They've already gone through that chapter in their life, which takes their own parenting opportunities away. It's a shame if these people might actually be terrific parents and actively enjoy it. It's often just the fear of being anything like their own parents that makes them shy away from it in the future. Enduring pain like it's nothing. The monotone, melancholy, emotional roller coaster. Oh shoot. Dang. Oh well. Preparation. Most people who've dealt with horrendous situations now prepare for the proverbial worst. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. You only have to fall down the ladder and hit every rung on the way down to learn that lesson. I went from financially stable to bankrupt over a 3-year period thanks to a double lung collapse and a car wreck that shattered my hip and put me 150 grand in the hole in less than 3 years in my early 20s. I'm almost 40 now. Crap like that scars you for life in more ways than one. Sometimes, even when they want to, they can't cry. I have this right now. Whenever I get close to crying, my brain does a hard reset, and without wanting it, I think, I'm almost crying, this is hilarious, and then the moment is over. It's really something. When the crap hits the fan, they know what to do. It can be really upsetting to know what to do when you just want someone else to take care of it for once. You brush it off and you're like, well crap, guess the only person going to get me out of this is me. They don't like being touched. When they have difficulty putting themselves first. The maturity with which they handle unexpected events, especially at a young age. Strange mix of pride and sadness when I watched the kid who was interviewed following a firearm tragedy outside of a baseball game say that she already knows what it's like to be shot at, so she knew how to react. Not trusting people. You could be friends for years and think you're close, but in fact, you don't have the slightest idea of what's going on in their lives. They could be staying up all night, being depressed, and tomorrow morning they say hello with a smile on their face. They simply don't trust people anymore, no matter what they do or don't do. Apologizing often for things that aren't their fault. Being able to put themselves in other people's shoes, even in the worst situation. That and always feeling guilty about something. Never asking for anything, even the bare minimum. apologizing for things that aren't their fault even in the slightest, never talking about their issues seriously, probably joking about them or even staying away from the topic completely. That and flinching at small things. Children who grow up in dysfunctional homes where there's a lot of fighting and arguing, when they're adults, tend to hate confrontation. They lack self-esteem and much more easily believe people who gaslight them. They don't easily stand up for themselves. Honestly, empathy and understanding. Many have heightened senses of empathy naturally, but oftentimes the people who really care for others show me that they themselves have really needed it at some point. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Their reaction to unexpected stress. If, for instance, you startle someone and their reaction is atypical, we're talking defensive or offensive stance, dropping to the ground, or otherwise very pronounced, followed by anger, that's a sign they've spent a lot of time in life-threatening situations. Also, if everyone around is panicking, but they're very calm and collected, that's an indication of living in a state of extreme, prolonged stress. They almost never get surprised or shocked. You probably talk to them about your problems, but you can't tell if they have any or if they've ever told you theirs. Also, you don't know much about them despite talking to them for a long time. Elusiveness hides things. People who are very closed off. I've always known that I'm a really private person, but I've recently made the connection about why I'm closed off to such a degree. When you've been through some crap in your life, sometimes the idea of anyone knowing any intimate detail about you can be very taxing and even scary. It is what it is. To explain, my family had a horrific house fire last year that just about took the lives of my parents, the lives of their pets, and destroyed almost everything they had, including literally everything from my childhood. About 2 weeks later, I had a friend I'd known for 20 years come up and tell me, "Hey, I'm so sorry your family had to go through that." It happens. No, it really doesn't. The stillness in which they read a room, quiet and not attracting attention until they're called upon. If they pay super close attention to the expressions of people around them and are always on the lookout for someone getting angry or upset, that's a surefire sign that they went through something at some point because it's a defense mechanism that they learn to try and head off upcoming blow-ups. Extremely true. Also, if they make a simple mistake, you can see them dying inside with panic and asking for forgiveness. Always helps to tell that person it's okay and help them resolve the issue so they hopefully don't fully shut down. They're very good at placating drunk or otherwise irrational people. Laughing at something bad or inconvenient happening to them. This is one of those ones that's concerning by degree. Like, it's probably on balance a good thing if you spill something on yourself and you're able to laugh it off. After you trip and impale your boss on a cake knife you're carrying, that's not so much something you should be laughing at. Lack of emotional response, whether that be happy or angry. It's like they're always in neutral. Isolation. At home, work, vacation. People's advice becomes repetitively annoying, but you're too worn down to even express it. There's a part that goes missing in some people that just can't be replaced with any advice, therapy, or other methods. A sort of numbness and feeling that you're on a different level or plane of existence that you know humans probably shouldn't veer into if it can be avoided. Apologizing constantly, as if for simply existing, either being extremely evasive and reserved in relationships or clinging on for dear life, perhaps oscillating between the two, feeling more comfortable in chaos and pain because that's more familiar than stability and comfort, living in a constant state of flight or fight or freeze or fawn. Not just in terms of hypervigilance sort of stuff, but when applied to their life in general. Not being able to fully identify typical emotions, having trouble expressing how they're feeling, or being completely numb and seemingly immune to reactions. Retelling traumatic events as if they were just another mundane life experience, and oftentimes not even realizing it was something traumatic, or being completely sparse with details about their life and past. Feeling constant guilt or shame, especially when it comes to something as simple as treating themselves occasionally, or even just attending to their basic needs, while simultaneously feeling guilty for so much as asking for help or support, helping and being there for others to the detriment of their own mental health and well-being, daydreaming a lot or being out of it, struggling to pay attention or actively dissociating throughout the day. That's all I can think of right now. The good old 1,000-yard stare. It will also be a case that people like this will do odd things when walking into a room. Like they'll step into a room, then step off to the side of the room and scan it before moving to wherever they planned to be in the room. And situational awareness is high, like they know where everyone is in that room. In my experience, a lot of people I've been around have poked fun at their trauma without necessarily realizing they didn't actually tell me or the people around them about it until after the joke happened, and nobody necessarily reacted positively. I've even done this a couple of times myself. It's definitely created some awkward situations. I call this the ghost walk, where someone will casually walk on the front of their feet to suppress the noise from their footsteps. I notice this from children and teens from troubled households typically. Some people should just not have children. So sad. I naturally do this. I don't have anything extremely traumatic in my life, but my family used to go on road trips a lot in my childhood, usually driving from our home to grandma's and back since we lived in different states. And at the hotels, we'd usually be told to walk softly and to not disturb the other guests, so that's what we did. I just never really stopped, so I walk softly and accidentally sneak up on people all the time. Incredible resilience. Constantly having a reason or explanation ready for anything, even though nobody asked, or over-explaining yourself without a prompt, or asking permission for really small things you wouldn't think about, or over-apologizing over small mistakes. Not being able to read these other comments because it's too relatable. My dog is a total sweetheart until I try to bake bread. As soon as I bring out my rolling pin, he freaks out. I don't want to know what happened, but it makes me sad. My old rescue was scared of newspapers and books. When someone apologizes for doing something as simple as dropping something, maybe they're just Canadian. When someone in the room gets loud or pushy, the person quietly leaves. Being called an old soul when I was a kid or teen or in my early adult years. Screw it, I still hear it at 26, though I believe that's in part due to me still looking young. Didn't realize until a few years ago that I'm not an old soul, I just had to grow up way too young. I definitely don't take it as the compliment that I used to. Really, any kid who for some reason gravitates towards adults much more than interacting with peers their own age is pretty telltale signs for me that there's stuff this kid shouldn't be dealing with. Empathy. Most people can't imagine themselves in your shoes until they're there. If they're particularly understanding, it's because they've been through the tough stuff themselves and give people understanding because of it. They check for the exits. They're mostly silent, lost in their own world, and often have difficulty maintaining relations and conversations. Observant. Extremely observant. So observant to the point where they can point out things about other people that are more than likely true without knowing the person at all. Remembering small details, noticing things you wouldn't even have thought to notice, but they did. Pay attention to the way someone reacts when you raise your voice slightly. Do they tense up? Do they stop what they're doing? Or do they instantly look down? Do you catch them observing you? The way they react can tell a lot about the type of crap they've been through. I guess you'd have to look for combinations of these signs though. I think I and any number of people exhibit individual tells like the ones we've read about here all the time. It's when they come up often or in a big enough group of other tells that maybe you'd begin to think something was going on. Emotional detachment. Uncanny calmness in dangerous or extreme situations like death threats, verbal aggression, fatal accidents, substance overdoses, public mayhem, you name it. Half the replies are just how I behave normally. Should I be worried? A lot of this stuff doesn't necessarily mean anything bad, but a lot of it can certainly be indicators, especially if you see multiple cues or can start tying them to specific stimulus where the reactions to stimulus are very different from the norm. I would think both my missing legs would be a pretty good indication. Kindness. The more sensitive or generous or more of a let-go person, more of an I don't want to own anything, I want to give things away thing, these people just lost interest enough that they're not even mad. They want everyone else to win. I was never in the military, but I have multiple friends and family who served and were in combat. They don't complain about anything normal people do. Raining out and they have no umbrella? Smile on their face. Snowing? Same smile. Traffic? Same smile. The exception being my one cousin with PTSD who ended things a year ago. If you know anyone who's struggling, please be there for them. Making effed up jokes about the things that happened to them. Underrated comment. Have you ever talked to EMTs? They've seen some horrific stuff and cope with it with a dark sense of humor. They've earned the right to their dark humor. Everyone else is screaming and shouting. They're smiling and speaking loudly but clearly. When you feel at home in the panic, you're probably too used to the suck. Flinching at small things. I've been through so much crap, but I always try to put on a fun and outgoing demeanor. People can only tell when I open up, and it usually ends in the weeping and laughing thing. It lasts a few seconds, and then it's back to normal. My dog is super sweet except for feeding time. In the previous home, her siblings ate her food. She's not sure if she's allowed to eat, so I've got to sit there and encourage her to eat each time. It's been 13 years since I got her, but she still does it. Was in rehab with a bloke who had PTSD from war. He was in Afghanistan. He wouldn't even tell me where he was deployed. If you can't even mention the location your trauma occurred in, you've been through some stuff. If they're wise beyond their years and everyone goes to them for advice. They can read the emotional temperature of a room the minute they walk into it. They can get vibes from people that tell them if others are annoyed, anxious, or angry. It's a survival skill they learned in a maladaptive childhood. They always meet people instead of driving with them. That way they can get the hell out of there if things get rough emotionally. See PTSD going through this like, yep, I do all of those. I'd add sensitivity to subtle changes in mood or atmosphere though. Hypervigilance and hyper-independence. Some view these as positive traits until they realize it's rooted in feeling unsafe and out of control. What was a scam that someone tried to cheat the system with at your job? At my McDonald's, this guy came with his 2 young kids and got Happy Meals, and then called me over and said, "This cheeseburger has no meat," and demanded that he get another cheeseburger, and then one of his kids said, "Dad, you just ate it," referring to the meat in the cheeseburger. "Congratulations, sir, you just played yourself." This happened to me, but it was in a double deluxe burger. My mum went up to the counter with my burger and was like, you forgot the meat." Worked at Office Depot. The rewards program used to give a percentage of purchases back to the customer in the form of a gift card every quarter. One cashier at Office Depot decided to sign up for the rewards program under her name and scan customers' purchases throughout the day under her own account. She ended up accruing thousands of dollars in rewards in one quarter. This is with 1% back on most purchases. It was more than any other customer in the southeast region of the US. Needless to say, it wasn't very difficult for management to realize what had happened. Shortly after that incident, Office Depot switched up the rewards program so this couldn't happen again. Happened to a coworker. They shipped a guitar to a customer once, and the customer called in saying he'd never received it, demanding a replacement to be sent immediately or else he'd sue. Tracking the info, it said it was delivered and signed for, but delivery theft is still pretty common. On a whim, though, my coworker looked him up on Facebook only to find him holding the guitar in his profile picture with the caption, "My new guitar just arrived." Management sent him a screenshot of that, and he was never heard from again. A delightfully drunk man insisting that the mop he was carrying away was his. "You brought that with you on a winery tour?" "Yes." "I've developed wonderful skills in dealing with les inebriates." I gently and firmly reclaimed the much-beloved mop and sent him on his way. We used to have free food for happy hour. Just some deep-fried Cisco crap like chicken tenders or jalapeno poppers. So many people would come in, order a water, load up on the free apps and leave. We'd stagger bringing them out, one tray at a time for the whole happy hour. It was always the people who weren't paying for any drinks at all who had the stones to get upset and get free stuff when the apps weren't coming out in a timely manner. I used to work as a hostess at a popular wing place. Once we had a family come through, and when it was time to pay, they handed their server a Denny's coupon. The server was like, "This is for Denny's, not for here." And the customer said, "Oh, I just thought I'd try it anyways, you never know." Well, at least it sounds like they weren't unpleasant about it. Also, if you're going to do that, you can at least try and cover by saying, "Oh, I must have left the other one on the kitchen counter or something." Still, I appreciate how front up they were about it. They wanted nachos, but the queso was $2 cheaper, so they tried to order queso with the meat on the side, explaining this reasoning to the server with straight faces. They threw a fit when the server and then the manager explained that the queso was already mixed in one big pot and we weren't going to pick out the solid bits for one order, especially since it's not like it would make a difference in how it tasted. Naturally, they complained about all the food they ate. They didn't end up ordering queso or nachos, apparently that was a deal breaker. But my manager had a, "If you cleaned your plate, you obviously liked the food" policy, so they were ultimately unsuccessful in getting the refund they so clearly were gunning for. I scanned a shirt without looking carefully and it rang up at $16.99. The customer politely asked me to check the tag because it was marked $10. I apologized and took a look. The clearance sticker was placed in entirely the wrong place, leaving the regular price barcode completely exposed, so that's what the scanner picked up. I apologized again and explained that the tickets didn't match up, but we'd have someone run a confirmatory price check. That was the first item I'd scanned, so I was extra vigilant with all his other items, all of which had improperly placed clearance tickets. They were all men's big and tall sizes, but at least one of the clearance tags was clearly from a junior miss. Some of the items were already clearanced, but with a replaced tag for just $2 or $3 difference. I would have caught it eventually, but pointing out the scanning error is what tipped me off. Throughout the whole thing, the guy was unfailingly polite, so I kept thanking him for his patience while we ran price checks. He still bought $50 worth of stuff. Another favorite was when one of our known shoplifters, the kind who does it as a criminal enterprise, turned in a job application. We had her on camera stealing handbags earlier that same day. My favorite in my McDonald's restaurant are the people who don't realize our soda fountain is behind the counter and they ask for a cup of water. So we get them a cup of water and hand it to them. They realize they can't fill it with the soda they wanted, and then they go ahead and order a soda anyway. Best caught in the act moment ever. In retail, people cutting out a UPC for a cheap item and taping it or gluing it to a more expensive one. I mean, if you're gonna do that, don't use the UPC for a $50 item on a lawnmower. When someone tries to return an item after wearing it and there's a giant stain that they couldn't get rid of. To piggyback off this, I get customers all the time complaining about deodorant marks on clothing to try and get a discount on it. When we wipe it right off in front of them, they're always a little upset. Then I sometimes get customers who get their own makeup on a garment and try to get a discount. Former fancy pants hotel worker here. We have a strict no smoking in the hotel policy because A, it's city law, and B, old historic buildings. But foremost, the city law dictates that if you allow smoking in your business, the air quality has to meet this impossible standard. I'm not sure what the standard is exactly, but you can look up Mike Ditka's restaurateur and the smoking ban for details. Anyhow, even with a $300 fine detailed at check-in and also in-room, people would still try to smoke in the rooms and get away with it. If they didn't leave evidence, we couldn't charge them, but oddly enough, nobody was ever that smart. On one occasion, the room was rank with smoke, and the housekeeper found a pop can loaded with cigarette butts. We usually photograph, tag, and inventory these items because people would tend to dispute the charges. So when presented with the evidence, this one lady tells us she was smoking outside the building, ashing into her hand, and then carrying her ashes up into her room on the 14th floor and depositing all of the ashes into the tiny hole of the pop can. She unsuccessfully disputed her charges. FYI, the $300 charge is in place because we can't sell the room until the air quality is that of a room where someone wasn't smoking. With a good ozone machine, that might take a day or two. I think a super popular one that most people are probably familiar with would be, "Let me talk to your manager." This is especially common when you're simply doing your job as instructed, following rules and policies, and then you tell the customer something they don't want to hear. "My ticket says it expires on January 1st, 2014. Can I still use that today?" "No, ma'am, I'm afraid not. Since the ticket is expired, you won't be able to use it. You'll need to buy a new one." "What? Nobody ever told me I couldn't use the ticket just because it expired. This is ridiculous. You're trying to steal my money. Let me talk to your manager right now. They're going to let me use this ticket or I'll sue you." Oh yeah, on that subject, threatening a lawsuit is another popular one that people try all day long. Had a lady call our Pizza Hut claiming that we gave her hard undercooked wings that sent her daughter to the hospital and she wanted us to pay her medical bills. However, none of the 5 or 6 phone numbers she provided showed any orders for wings or anything else in our system or the nearest few stores. I don't know if she just expected us to give her thousands of dollars on hearsay. Working at the pool, I've had more than one person use, "Man, it's called free swim for a reason. It's actually called recreation swim, so, go pay." One day I was working with my dad and a customer told him he'd call his manager and get him fired because he's a good friend of his. My dad owns the store. He laughed and told him to never come back again. Another time, some guy tried to steal a banjo by putting it under his jacket. Unluckily for him, I was taking a break and looking at the cameras and I caught him. I went to confront him. He took the banjo and started rubbing it with his jacket, saying he was cleaning it, not stealing. To be fair, that's not a situation that any good improviser could easily explain away in that scenario. I think if there were an improv scene about a man trying to steal a banjo, there's a fairly good chance they'd come up with exactly this excuse in the scene. This was internal. I served at Red Robin for a while, and you could sign up for these cards called royalty cards, where every 10th burger is free. A couple of servers at my restaurant got themselves all fired at the same time for trying to game the system. They'd swipe the card for any table that didn't have one, and then apply the 10th burger to a table that paid in cash, so they could pocket the extra $10 or so. Red Robin monitors how often the cards are used. They were caught within 2 days. They'll argue with me about the size of a free birthday scoop, which, it says it right there. One of my old jobs had an online order system with a special instructions box. You wouldn't believe how many times people typed in "add bacon" or "double meat, extra cheese," expecting to get these things for free. They were always angry if you added these things to their ticket, and then they'd be like, "Well, I don't want those things if they cost extra." They'd always expect me to give them their already made sandwich with the extras, and nope, I remade them every time. I once saw a woman at a Longhorn's chain steakhouse walk out with an entire bowl of those small packaged mints. The hostess was in such shock, but by the time she walked out to say something, the woman was already driving off in her car. I used to work in a call center job. My job was to call customers' references. These are usually people that know the customer well enough, and we make sure the info we have on file is correct. 1 time out of 10, we'll get a mum or boyfriend or friend or aunt who'll put the customer on blast and tell us that they won't pay their bill. The customer will get cancelled. As per call center rules, we're not allowed to hang up on people or argue with them. The worst was when a customer would list 3 references, set up 3 Google Voice numbers, and then answer the phone on all 3 numbers and just attempt to change their voice to give themselves a reference. And I had to sit and listen to it the whole time. Ask them questions while they plug their nose and try to pass themselves off as a different person. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Worked at Starbucks for a while, had this one guy always try to scam free stuff. So to get a venti coffee, it's like $2 or $3? And the first thing in the morning, we don't have much cash in the drawers, maybe $50, seeing as it's the start of the day. So this guy comes in 5 a.m. or 5:30 and orders just a large coffee. But you see, he only has $100. Me being the nice, customer-friendly girl I am, I just offer to him for free, not realizing what was happening, and send him on his way. It's not his fault we don't have the change for him, right? Then he tries it again the next day. I mean, really? Are you so dumb that you wouldn't think I wouldn't notice it? This time I say, "Oh, let me get the manager so we can make change for you." "Oh, now you suddenly have a $5 bill in your car." "Sure, buddy." I work in a fairly high-end restaurant. Apparently, it's extremely common for people to pull a piece of their own hair out and put it in their food so they don't have to pay the bill. Back when I was in college and worked at 7-Eleven, the paper food stamps were still the norm. EBT wasn't around yet. We kept a stack of $1 food stamps in the register for making change on larger denominations, but any change less than $1 was given back in coins. We sold some small candies for 5 or 10 cents a piece, and people would come in over and over, buy a candy with a $1 stamp, get their change, leave the store, rinse and repeat until they had enough change to buy alcohol. Here in the UK, it's actually illegal to give cash change for food stamps for exactly this reason. Like yours, our food stamp system is not valid for purchases of alcohol or tobacco. My buddy works at the local Taco John's. Whenever someone pays with the exact change, he just cancels the order and pockets the cash. This is why a lot of fast food places have a little sign now that says if you don't get a receipt, your order's free. I used to work in medical billing. This one lady called to make an appointment and she had no proof of insurance. She insisted she had insurance and was unwilling to pay anything at her appointment. We said that if she had her insurance agent call up our office with her policy info and confirm that she was insured, we'd accept that. So she hangs up, then within minutes she calls us back from the same number, her cell phone, and pretends to be an insurance representative. My coworker got that one and said, "Excuse me, ma'am, are you calling from the patient's cell phone?" The lady hung up that phone very quickly, and we never heard from her again. People at grocery store self-checkout who scan something cheap but then put something way more expensive but the same weight into their bags. Bonus if you just ring up the wrong kind of vegetable. For example, my grocery store charges more for peeled onions than unpeeled of the same type, but they look exactly the same. Lots of greens look very similar. It would be very hard to catch unless the cashier was looking directly at you, and then it can be claimed as an honest mistake. I guess I have a story about the opposite that always blew my mind. My parents live out in the country, and there's a super tiny McDonald's on the highway closest to them. They went to grab a quick bite, and they were about 15 minutes from home at this location, so they ordered inside and ate inside as well. My mum ordered chicken nuggets, bit into one when she was sitting down and realized it was pretty cold. So she returned it, they gave her a freshly fried sixer, and she was happy. 5 to 10 minutes later, a lady came running inside yelling at the top of her lungs that someone had bit into one of her nuggets. Instead of checking Mum's used box of nugs, they just threw it in the next drive-thru bag. She still laughs her butt off about that. Oh man, we had a waiter keep used gift cards, and then when a family would try and pay with a gift card, he'd swap them so it looked like it didn't work, and the family would pay or get their meal comped, and he'd walk away with the gift cards. He then sold them on Craigslist or used them when people paid in cash and kept the money. My boss called the number on Craigslist who was selling our cards and asked who he was. He was fired the next day. I work in IT. Some guy wanted to get some free prints, so he asked for a refund on a bunch of pages, saying he didn't issue the print request. Aside from that being, not the greatest reason, since you had to log in to submit requests, we could literally track his iPhone via MAC address as he moved across campus connecting to our Wi-Fi spots. It just so happened that he had moved from his room to the printer location and back right before he made the request. I will say there was a moderate to good chance of this guy's plan working with a less attentive staff member, so good on you for being diligent. Worked at a movie theater and we had a guy who'd purchase an IMAX ticket and use his royalty card to get the points. Usually he'd purchase it at a kiosk, and I kid you not, he'd come asking for a refund less than 5 minutes after the purchase. How the loyalty system was set up was that the points would not be refunded, so he did this a few times just to get a free movie coupon. Pretty easy to catch it because we noticed the time the ticket was purchased after we refunded it. Sent it up the ladder to corporate, his loyalty account was cancelled and they changed the system to refund points as well. Former Starbucks employee here. Customer orders drink, barista makes drink, customer says it doesn't taste right, so we have to remake it, but they keep the first mistake drink as well and give it to a friend who just happened to not order anything. Finally, they now have a policy. To remake the drink, you have to also give up the first mistake drink. Also, ordering just espresso shots over ice and then filling up the rest with creamer at the craft bar. There's a special circle in hell for you people. I work in a book chain here in Ireland where we use the euro. A lot of our magazines come from the UK where they use pounds, so they'll have a price in pounds on the cover. I had one woman absolutely lose it at me when the price came up as €6 when the price on the cover said £4. She insisted on paying the pound price because she happened to have a £5 note on her, but asked to see my manager at 9 PM on a Saturday night when I told her we couldn't sell her the pound price because we add Irish taxes, cost of doing business, to that price. People are just the worst. I'm not really hungry. Can I order off the kids' menu? Sure, I'm in a good mood and I've had a good day so far. Why not? I drop off the check. Isn't the drink supposed to be included in the price of the kids' meal? The gym I work at has a check-in computer that none of us employees ever check. We know everyone by name, and maybe every once in a while we check memberships. It's not our job, but the job of the manager who's completely absent. If someone needs to pay, a message pops up after check-in that they need to pay, but it gets deleted when the member hits enter. So I checked this one guy on a random whim. He hadn't paid his membership in over a year. Next time he came in, he scanned his card and hit enter. I was standing behind him and said, "So for a year you've been pretending to scan in and all the while you know you haven't paid your membership. Man, if things are so bad for you that you can't afford $30, I'll gift you a charity membership through our poverty program. Are you interested?" He said, "No, here's $30, I'll pay from now on." About 2 months later, he stopped coming in. What I hated was that he was a friend at that point. Yeah, some friend. Steal from where I work and then smile and hug me every time you come in? Liar. Creep. Get the frick out of my gym. I used to usher at baseball games and fans would buy cheap tickets off StubHub, then check our official site before the game on their smartphones. They'd pick the blue dots in the first few rows that hadn't sold yet and move up there to watch the game. Not bright since we had access to the same info as them. I work at Starbucks. Yes, I understand how overpriced it is. If I didn't work there, I'd never order it. Anyways, we had a regular who came in every day and was huge and was a very cheap person. If you bring your own cup, you get a 10-cent discount, and he always said, "Don't forget my discount." It's 10 cents, dude, whatever. He recently told one of my partners that his previous drink was made wrong and that a different partner, let's call her Julie, had said he could get a free one. Julie wasn't there at the time, so he went ahead and gave it to him. Came to find out that Julie had never said that and hadn't even talked to him. So about a week went by and one of my supervisors, let's call her Wendy, asked him about it and said, "Well, Julie's in a lot of trouble for this because she isn't authorized to give away free drinks without letting someone know." And he said, no, it was, he gave another name. And she said, "Oh, really? Because they're the one who was telling me this. So next time, make sure to try your drink before you leave so this doesn't keep happening." He was so nervous he dropped his lid twice and kept stuttering. Look, if you can't afford it, don't buy it. I only say that because he adds a million things to it and gets mad that we charge him for it. The worst was, I can barely taste any Crown, man, and they put the drink back on the bar like I'm going to top it up. You saw me pour the frickin' jigger, I'm not going to give you free booze, especially after the tip you just forgot to leave me. Family of 4 orders one entree for all 4 of them to share and keeps asking me for free bread baskets. Which, I'm not spending any more time on your cheap butt because 1, I know you won't tip me well, and 2, if you're that broke, why come to my restaurant when you could just get 30 items on the dollar menu at some fast food joint for the one dish you're buying here? I work as a barista and sometimes someone will come up to me and tell me that their drink was made wrong earlier and the manager told them they could come back for a free one later. But they never have a receipt and they can never remember which manager they spoke with. It's always super obvious that it's a scam and they always just leave when I offer to grab a manager. I love it when people try to get free stuff at hotels. I was traveling with this guy and he thinks he's a god. I got a free upgrade because I had status with the hotel. My companion did not and absolutely blew a gasket. He then stood there for like half an hour trying to get the free suite. Finally, a big group arrived and they blew him off. Same day next morning, he began negotiating again. Finally, they sold him an upgrade for like $15. The best part is that this was at a Fairfield Inn, so we're not talking about much of a difference. Gentlemen, what did your girlfriend's dad do to establish dominance? I found out my father-in-law was a high-ranking official for the Secret Service in Poland during the Soviet era. He doesn't have to do anything more to terrify me. I married her, though. Best decision I've ever made. She's much prettier than I am. We're 16, talking out in front of her house at 8 p.m., very innocently. He comes out and starts mowing the lawn, making eye contact the whole time. To be fair, it's nice and cool at 8 p.m., and mowing in the midday heat is a pain. Plus, mowing in the morning sucks due to the grass being wet from dew. My ex-wife's father, actually a pretty cool guy, one year at Christmas, I was trying to open a package that my nephew had gotten, and my father-in-law said, "Just use your pocket knife." I said, "Sorry, I don't carry a pocket knife. I'll go get one from the kitchen." He said, "What kind of man doesn't carry a pocket knife?" I sat there for a minute, trying to think of a response, feeling pretty low. He started laughing and said, "Sorry, my wife's dad asked me that one time and I've been waiting to use it on you." My ex-wife and I are still on pretty decent terms. That gentleman passed away recently. It was a really sad thing, knowing that he was gone. He introduced himself, told me about his profession, that of a surgeon. Then during the conversation, he slipped in the line, "Oh, and if you get hurt, I can give you personalized care, or finish you off. It all depends on how you treat my daughter." Oh, and he had some crazy eyes too, always wide open. He's blind. He asked if he could feel my face to get an idea of what I looked like. It was awkward, but my girlfriend Alice was smiling brightly, so I felt a little proud. Then he stepped back, shrugged his shoulders and said, "You can do better, Alice." He's my father-in-law now and one of the funniest and smartest men I've ever known. My fiancée was in a horrible relationship before we dated. Her dad met me with joy after I genuinely smiled and shook his hand when we met. Now we golf, fish, and hunt together when we can. My dad passed away last year and hanging out with her father is always a pleasure. All my girlfriend's dad had to do was stand up. I'm 5'6" and he's 6'1". My sympathies, short king. That sort of thing shouldn't matter too much, but I say this knowing that if the man who sired my girlfriend was a full 7 inches taller than me, I would be intimidated. He sat down on the couch next to me shirtless and just wearing long underwear and said, "Let's play a game called See How Uncomfortable We Can Make Trevor." My name isn't even Trevor, by the way. Then he proceeded to take me up to his bedroom and tried to coerce me into smoking Mary J and doing fungi, even though I told him I'd never done any substances, never wanted to do them, and was expecting to be tested as I was trying to get into the military. Eventually he backed off, but he was always pretty weird. We got quite drunk the first night we met. I took his side over hers in a debate they were having. He grabbed my face and kissed me on the lips. Years later, walking her down the aisle, he said to me, "She's your problem now." In short, I have an awesome father-in-law. The best part is, a year later, we didn't live on the same continent as her parents, hence the gap, we went back and I met her sister for the first time. Drunken night again, girlfriend and her sister were arguing who was dad's favorite, and their dad shouted, "Out of everyone here, my name is my favorite." So I got up, walked over, grabbed him by the face, and kissed him on the lips again. He actually didn't do anything himself to terrify me, but my girlfriend did it for him. She told me all about how her grandfather, his father, was a legitimate lumberjack and how he, her dad, was pretty much one as well. He chopped wood for fun, and at one point his arms were so big that he had to cut the sleeves off his flannel shirts. He also used to bow hunt, camp for days, and works out a lot. He's the manliest man I personally know, which is a stark contrast to me. He's a really nice guy and has only made me feel slightly uncomfortable with his sarcasm. Wait a minute, wait. Is he single? Yeah, he's on the dating app Timber. He was never around. It actually freaked me the F out. He was like a ninja. I was always checking in the shadows, waiting to see if he'd spring out. My girlfriend's older brother and her dad cornered me at a party, and her older brother said if I ever did anything to upset her, he'd suck the manhood right off me. He's not gay. The party was for his baby's baptism. Told me to eat more the second time we had dinner together. Real hard guy, right? The first time I met him, I gave him a carton of Mao's favorite brand of cigarettes. He's Chinese and a smoker. We can't communicate much in English or Chinese, but I'm pretty sure he likes me. Her mother, on the other hand, has done everything short of putting a 12 gauge in my mouth and making me promise I'm not wasting her daughter's time, including pressuring me to buy a car, even though I live like a 15-minute walk from my office and public transport is as fast as driving. Shot me, point blank, with a Nerf weapon. No warning, just at dinner I was having with their family. All he said was, "You try any funny business, you'll get the or nothing." Background: I'd recently started dating my girlfriend and had met her dad one time. I'd left a bottle of whiskey at my girlfriend's house. She was out of town for the weekend, so I asked if I could sneak in and grab it. I came in and yelled to see if anyone was home, and no one replied. I went upstairs to grab my bottle, and in bursts her dad with his hands raised, asking who I was and saying he was a judo champion. He then realized who I was, and we said an awkward goodbye. He pulled me into the laundry room and made me help him fix the washing machine. It was odd, but after he realized that I had a general grasp of how to use tools, he seemed to lighten up. Also, asking him to help me replace the radiator in my first car was a plus. Love that man to death. Too bad his daughter's a psychopath. Yeah, I'm breaking up with you, but I'd like to negotiate joint custody of your dad. This guy clammed up, basically acted as if I wasn't there, and if I did talk to him, I got single-word answers. This is an actual conversation when I was stuck in a car with him. So, what do you do? Sales. Been doing that a long time? Yes. How many years? 30. Are you retiring soon? Yep. What are you planning to do when you retire? Florida. Where in Florida? West. So like, Tampa? Yep. My girlfriend got a text the next day from him saying that I'm a great guy and he's happy she's dating me. I was 17 at the time and was really into his 16-year-old daughter, so he sat me down at his kitchen table for what I thought would be a talk. Instead, he pulls out a length of rope and demonstrates step-by-step how to tie a proper noose for hanging someone. Dated a girl back in high school who took me to her grandparents for a family reunion-type meal. Sometime after the dinner, her grandfather took me outside to talk and we started walking towards his workshop. So he opens the door and suddenly I'm staring down the barrel of a cannon. Not a model, not a toy, a fully functioning Civil War cannon surrounded by all manner of historical weaponry. Muskets, rifles, swords, bayonets, battle axes, and even a suit of armor. You name it, the old boy collected it. Needless to say, I knew right then and there that Gramps didn't F around and I probably shouldn't be doing anything to really annoy his granddaughter. I once came to a girl's house to pick her up for a date in high school, and her father answered the door and said, "Come in." So I followed him inside to discover the dining room table was covered in disassembled firearms, and he casually sat back down, resumed oiling and assembling everything, looked up and said, "So, what are you kids up to tonight?" This is as far as a dad can go towards opening the door with a loaded weapon without actually, doing that. Loving the friendly tone that he set as well. He broke my rear window with a cricket bat for taking his daughter on an amazing date that made her happy. She was supposed to have an arranged marriage. He's from Bangladesh. Shook my hand real firm and asked, "Hello, are you effing my daughter in your apartment?" No introduction, wouldn't let go without an answer. I'm really tall and he's a short, stocky wrestler. 14 years later, we're still together. It was suggested that I put my answer here, so I will. I believe she interrupted with, "Dad," and we kept a firm grip. We locked eyes, silence for a few seconds, and I said, "Pleased to meet you, sir." He said nothing. I knew that he knew. We both knew. He shows me that he knows how to run and tune large industrial equipment all the time, and I don't mind because it's actually interesting as F. Watching a movie with my girlfriend. I'm wearing my Alabama hoodie and he saw it. We were in the basement and she got a text from him which was a picture of a bed with all Alabama covers, pillows, and stuff with the caption, "When you're ready for a romantic night with your cousin." I took the hoodie off and left in shame after that. He made me a bet. If I could catch 3 footballs while his daughter was covering me, I'd have his respect. Not the strangest bet I've made, but whatever. I ran 3 different routes for each one, caught the first 2. Last one, I didn't know this about my girlfriend, but she's a huge Deion Sanders fan. Ball goes up, she catches it, and in the process elbows me in the face and gives me a black eye. Why am I walking away from this convinced she let you catch the first 2, and she's done this to multiple men? He told me he worked for the Ministry of Defense, that his job was very high security clearance and potentially dangerous. Basically portrayed himself as kind of a big deal spy, and he'd published some papers on counter-terror methods, so at least it kind of tied together with his academic interests. I never really found out what his actual job was or if he was bullcrapping me. But I do know that his daughter didn't know much more than I did, and she was unable to legally declare his income for the purposes of student finance assessments, which does kind of support the idea that his salary isn't supposed to be a matter of public record. My father-in-law left her when she was a child. It was a real power play on his part, in my opinion. Back in 2009, my then-girlfriend's dad joined us at a college party and walked up to me wordlessly, grabbed my drink and chugged it in its entirety before handing the can back to me. He's a funny guy who was fond of me. It was mostly an ironic gesture of dominance. Kind of a joke? Joke's on him though, that drink was a bona fide, cafe-laden 22-ounce Four Loko. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Literally none of the girls I dated had dads, either by death or divorce. I wonder what that says about me. Dad cleaned a 9mm in front of me. That said, I think he already knew that my dad was a cop and he figured I thought weapons were cool, which was true. I truly thought he was trying to relate to me. In hindsight, I guess not. He was never a jerk, always neutral and friendly, Korean war vet and nuclear engineer. He had mad tech knowledge of his hobbies. When I was 18, I went over to my girlfriend's house for dinner, in rural Montana, to meet her parents for the first time. My girlfriend knocks on the door, her dad answered the door with a 12-gauge, looks me dead in the eye and says, "So, you're the guy who's been effing my daughter." Girlfriend shakes her head and walks into the house, leaving me on the porch with her dad. After about 4 seconds of me trying not to pee myself, he laughed and told me he had been waiting 18 years to do that. I guess it had been a running joke in the family that he was going to meet whatever boy she brought home at the door with a shotty, and I was the first one she had brought back. I actually found it pretty funny once my heart rate settled to below heart attack levels. They're a pretty liberal family of artists who really seem to respect their children's rights to do whatever with dating, and I ended up living in a teepee in their backyard for a summer. It's still joked about 20 years later. While his daughter and I are no longer together, we dated for about 4 years, I'm still very close with her and her family and stop by whenever I'm in the area. Haven't even exchanged names yet. The guy puts his finger on my chest, I look down and of course he flips it up into my face. Laughs so hard. I wasn't expecting it, but that's just who this guy is. The first time I ever went to my girlfriend's house, her dad busted open the board game, Ticket to Ride, and proceeded to utterly destroy me. As he stole the last possible way for me to get from New York to LA, he looked me in the eye. He knew what he was doing. 5 years later, I've still never beaten him. He showed me pictures and told stories of his family and Chairman Mao together. Pretty sure they could have made me disappear. This is what my dad did when my sister's boyfriend came home for the first time. Just sitting at the table, sharpening the kitchen's knives. I still don't know if it was a coincidence. My dad says it was, but my mum and sister make a really good point. He had never sharpened knives for the kitchen before. The story of my dad waiting for him sharpening knives has been told around the whole school for a couple of years. First time sleeping at their house. At breakfast in the morning, come up the stairs and he's cooking bacon in red tighty-whities. He sat on the couch and watched house remodeling shows on HGTV while eating bags of candy. My dad told my boyfriend that he reminds him of the song Rosalita by Bruce Springsteen. It's about a no-good, dirt-poor musician sleeping with the guy's daughter and convincing her to sneak out of the house. See, that one wouldn't have worked on me because I'm an uncultured yob who can't name any songs by their title and who also doesn't really listen to any of them deeply enough to understand their meaning. So that's going to go over my head, Dad. My father-in-law held some state title for boxing state champ in his home state back in the day. The first time we drove over to see him, he was drunk and had a huge cut across the bridge of his nose. Apparently, he had beat the crap out of 3 20-something-year-old bullies the night before when they decided to jump him at the bar. His 70-something-year-old dad was mugged in his own home one time. My father-in-law found the guy who did it, followed him inside his house and broke his knees and elbows. He then proceeded to beat the crap out of the guy to the point of brain damage. In his words, if they can't talk, they can't identify you. The guy is chill as F every time I'm around and thanks me every time I see him for getting his daughter out of the hellhole they lived in. But I know for a fact if I ever break her heart, he'd fricking bury me. If I ever leave, it'll have to be leaving the country. That said, he's actually a super cool guy who's never given me trouble for a second. He'll call me up out of the blue and thank me for taking care of his daughter. Because he knows if she wasn't with me, she'd probably have ended up with one of the buttholes she'd been dating around there. My ex-father-in-law never did anything to really establish dominance. He shook my hand and looked at me and asked how I was doing. About 7 months later, when she was my girlfriend, we went and told him and her mother that she was pregnant, but we'd already started saving extra money and had a plan for when the baby was born. This was in 2002. He once again shook my hand and thanked me for actually being a real man. Eventually, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and we moved in with them so we could keep a better eye on him. I ended up with not only another father figure like my grandfather, but a best friend. We did everything together and had a lot of fun. We'd pick on each other so much it could easily get out of hand, much to the rolling of eyes of our respective wives. He went missing a couple of times, going for a walk and getting turned around, and then went for a drive and got lost. I was terrified but kept my composure and didn't stop looking until we found him hours later. He was a stereotypical Texan with lots of weapons, cowboy boots, and hats, but with a heart the size of Texas itself to match. As a fun fact, when his daughter, my wife, ended up cheating on me, which led to separation and divorce, she thought it was okay to bring the new guy around a couple of months after our daughter and I moved back near my family. My old father-in-law excused himself and came back with one of his weapons and simply proclaimed, "You're not Paul," and the guy actually peed himself. He told me about it later on the phone, cracking up, and he said, "I'm not as far gone as they think sometimes." And he told me that I'll forever be his son. I miss that old Texan cowboy. I flew overseas to meet my wife's family and ask for her hand in marriage. Made reservations at one of the fancier restaurants in town and asked him to meet me there for a talk. I should add that I was unemployed and completely broke. He pulls up in a BMW, tires screeching, and tells me to get in. I protest that we have reservations and he says to forget about them. He takes me to a really simple coffee shop, says that I don't need to impress him with fancy stuff. I tell him that I love his daughter and will always make sure that she's happy. He just looks at me for a long time, not saying anything, and finally says, "I don't know you, but I know my daughter and she's really smart. So many guys wanted to marry her and she turned them down. If she sees something in you, then I'm all for it." We shook hands and then we drove to the supermarket so I could help him haul a crap ton of groceries. My wife and I have now been married for 15 years, and he's always been a complete gent to us. Even though I showed up in his city completely broke and jobless, lived under his roof and ate his food, he never once made me feel that he was doing me some kind of favor, or that I was anyone but a valued member of his family. And this despite the fact that he has a nasty temper and never holds his tongue with anyone else. I worked my butt off and got back on my feet, and my wife made a big leap in her career as well, and eventually we moved back to the States. He continues to be my ideal of what a real man should be. I hope to deal with my own daughter's husband as honorably as he's done with me. My father just happened to be cleaning his weapons and trying out his bore sight when I brought my boyfriend home for the first time. A table full of rifles and shotties. My boyfriend's reaction was, "Oh, neat," and they talked about the weapons for an hour. They went without me to a blacksmithing festival recently. I think all I did was bring home a friend for my dad. I live in Langley, Virginia. The other thing that lives in Langley is the CIA. A girl I asked out in my freshman year of high school had her dad drive us to the mall. No biggie, I'm a fairly confident person and there wasn't much of a plan to fool around at the mall. All part of his plan, I'm sure. Anyway, we get into his pickup truck and I'm in the back. The guy's wearing a navy dress blue uniform. I see he's a petty officer. I know insignia because I was a Sea Cadet. I was idly curious and wanted to make small talk so the guy likes me, so I check out his insignia when he turns around and talks to me. Red chevrons and a trident. The guy was a frickin' Navy SEAL. Never mentioned it, but you could tell he knew that I knew. Subtle yet effective. I give this boyfriend scaring method an A+. Yeah, the whole FBI or CIA agent father is one thing, but you still never know if that person has handled a weapon in conflict in their life or if they're some kind of agent or HR administrator for that organization. This guy was about as dangerous as a man can be. I would be fascinated to know if he managed any conversation more than a squeak after that. My wife, or girlfriend at the time, is Japanese, so we flew to Japan so that I could meet her dad and ask for her hand in marriage. At dinner, he pulled out the whiskey and beer. Turned out to be a drinking contest where I had to match him drink for drink. The problem is that I'm 6 feet tall, have 25 pounds on his butt, and I'm Mexican-American. Insert stereotypes here. 3 hours later, he was blotto, passed out, while I was at the mini-mart buying a 6-pack to drink on my walk back to the hotel. That night, I became a family legend. She had 2 mums. It was quite awkward when they both tried establishing dominance. Gay dude here, but I'm quite a bit more masculine than my fiancé, so I'm going to count myself in for this question. I think it's also a good story for its contrast with all the weapon-toting, axe-wielding knife sharpeners in this group. The first time I met my then-boyfriend's parents, his dad invited us along to the opera with them. I'm from a blue-collar family and had virtually zero clue what was going on and could hardly understand anything. It was a pretty mind-boggling experience. Then he took us out for a $400 dinner and insisted I have a really good couple of scotches after. I was like, damn, I hope your son doesn't expect to keep living like this because I'm poor as F in comparison. He didn't. I don't play that silly game, neither did she, and thankfully, neither did he. It was, you seem like a nice guy and I trust my daughter's judgment about you. None of the nonsense of scaring the daughter's boyfriend that crappy dads like to do. When did you wreck someone who completely underestimated you? I was at a conference when I was about 24 or 25. As I was waiting near the front of the room, I was approached by a guy I'd never met who said something like, "Son, let me give you some free advice. You want to be successful in this industry, pay attention to the next presenter." I was the next presenter. There is a classy or thoughtful way to do this, and this d-bag, condescending way to do it. I promise this guy was not trying to be helpful. He was trying to be an awesome industry insider who could talk down to people. There was a great internship posted on my law school job board. I applied, did all the right steps and stuff, didn't even get an interview. 6 months later, a similar offer is posted, and I apply again. This time, someone from my school's career office calls and says, "We can't send someone with your credentials to that prestigious employer because this is a really important relationship for the school." I apply on my own, get the interview, and get the position. The school finds out I got the internship, wants to set up a meeting to make sure expectations are set correctly, and I politely tell them to pound sand. Now I have a full-time job with that company. I am underestimated every Friday at the arcade. Just because I'm 30, slightly chubby, and dressed in a suit, it doesn't mean that I can't beat a couple of teenagers' butts in Dance Dance Revolution. My girlfriend's dad was helping me tune up my truck. He's a real domineering type of guy and likes to be bossy, so I was just letting him, quote, educate me on vehicle maintenance. Towards the end, I was sitting in the truck while he plugged the wires back up. He wanted me to turn it over, and nothing. He tried again, and I turned the key again, nothing. At this point, I hopped out and without a word plugged the wires correctly into the cap and started the truck no problem. To this day, I'm the only person he doesn't try to educate and boss around. In short, Google is a great friend. I'm blonde with blue eyes, 6 foot tall, and I live in the US. I speak fluent Japanese and work in the automotive industry. It's strategic to send me to meetings with Japanese executives, and at some point during the meeting I invariably begin speaking Japanese. Immediately, everyone loses their mind. What constitutes losing your mind in a serious high-level Japanese business meeting? Because TV has taught me that those things are pretty stony-faced, and I'm imagining the reaction being a few seconds of slightly surprised blinking. But then again, I'm only going off a media stereotype, so please let me know if something else would go down. I got told by some of my teachers not to apply to top UK universities because I wouldn't get in. I got into UCL and I'm doing just fine. Take that, you pencil-membered teachers. Same sort of thing happened to me. I was an above-average student, minded my own business for the most part. Needless to say, the guidance counselor had no idea who I was because I was never in the office for any reason. I was a good egg. She looks at my target schools, it was fricking UMass and a few smaller options. Not exactly shooting for the moon. But nope, she was like, "No way that will happen, are you joking? Have you considered 2-year community school?" Playing Trivial Pursuit at Christmas with my ex-girlfriend's family. Most of them and their partners are teachers with a couple of college professors thrown in. They looked down on me as I worked in a manual labor job. I won and then drank all the Baileys. I hope the end of this was more of a, "You have won our respect. Come and drink with us as an educated man," and not, "Frick you, motherfuckers! I won! I'm gonna drink me some Baileys," before crapping into the pipes they were definitely smoking. I'm pretty laid back. I wear business casual clothes to work, like nice dresses, flat shoes, but no suits, perhaps heels now and then. I introduced myself to a new employee in our department that works right next to mine. I realized his attitude was a bit condescending as we talk, and as I start to walk away, he asks, "Are you one of the work-study students?" I smiled and realized he thought I was a student worker, and that explained his attitude. I just laughed and said, "No, I'm Dr. Damsel, but it's great that you think I look young enough to be an undergrad." My girlfriend used to call her uncle or other relatives to hang up lamps and do other related stuff like drilling holes in our place. She did so because she thought I had no idea how to do that. One day, I told her, "Now I have to do all of that. I should have kept it safe and secret." I was at a prestigious wrestling tournament when I made it to the finals. The guy I was wrestling in the finals was bragging that he'd get the fastest pin in the tournament finals. Well, lo and behold, 1 minute 25 into the first period, he did get pinned the fastest in the finals of the tournament. Not exactly on point, but I became a professor at a university that wouldn't accept me as a student. Teaching classes I wasn't deemed good enough to take when I was younger was gratifying. I'd been working as a data entry clerk at night in a medical practice. The new business manager found out that I knew bookkeeping. She assigned me to balance the checkbooks. None had been balanced since she first started there. I thought the doctors were fools, but I balanced them and gave them back to her. Then she threatened to fire me if I ever mentioned to anyone how long the books had not been balanced. Wrong-o. I was a temp, and at the best of times I didn't care if I left a job or not. I spent the rest of my shift typing up a complete report on everything that I knew was wrong in the practice, from handling patients' appointments to posting payments. I think it was over 5 pages long. Then I made copies of my report and dropped them in the doctor's mailboxes at the hospitals that they covered. That way she wouldn't know that I'd stuck a knife in her back. I offered the doctors 3 options. First, I disappear and they forget the whole thing. Or I hire a business manager on commission and leave. Or I take over and I'd straighten the place out, and when it ran right, I'd leave then. I'd given them my name and number. Then I went home and started sorting what stayed and what went with me. I didn't even bother to call in the next shift or the one after that. Then I got a call from the head of the practice asking for a meeting. I met with all 5 to 7 doctors. I offered to stick around until they could hire a real business manager. The next day, I was the manager and she was unemployed. Nobody threatens me. I hated that job, but I did it just out of sheer spite towards her. I was at a new high school. My English teacher gave the class a take-home PSAT for practice. I handed it in and got a 1450 out of 1600. She accused me of cheating and lying. Eventually, we left it at, "Well, let's see how he goes on the real test." I got 1510 out of 1600, the highest in the school. F that witch, it still feels good 25 years later. I was considered the dumb one out of my group of friends at school. I'm the only one who obtained a college education, moved away from our hometown, got a decent job, and didn't get anyone pregnant. Go me! My dad used to tell me all the time not to bother with higher learning because I'd just waste my money by failing everything. I graduated with honors, and Dad still tells everyone how much of a loser I am. Oh, this one always makes me smile. When I was in high school, just about to graduate, we all had to go see the careers advisor at school. For a little bit of backstory, it's important to know that I'm physically disabled but not mentally impaired in any way. Anyway, when I went to see her, she told me that perhaps I shouldn't aim for university as it was going to be a challenge with my educational deficits. I asked her what she meant and she said, "Well, your disability, of course." I very politely explained that my disability has had no impact on my mental cognition at all, and she said, "I don't think you're right. I think you need to consider the fact that you'll never work or live a normal life. These days, I'm at university studying to be a social worker. Yes, I know it's not something incredibly academic, but I made it to university. Screw that ignorant careers advisor." I don't know if there are more of these to come, but we're getting a fairly decent volume of awful school career advisors so far. I mean, I know they're meant to help students manage their expectations, but this one felt really ignorant. I once was driving my sister's Geo Metro because my car broke down. It has like pink flower stickers all over it. Some high school tough guy in his raised pickup truck cut me off badly on a back road. I honked my horn and he pulled over. I followed suit. He gets out and starts walking towards my car. I proceed to untangle myself from this tiny car and I step out. The look on his face when he sees my 6'3", 280-pound frame was definitely worth the hour-and-a-half drive in that tiny piece of crap. This woman asks if I was strong enough to put some boxes on a shelf, so I picked her up so she could put the damn box up there by herself. But remember to turn yourself into Ryan Gosling first. I repeat, if you do not look like Ryan Gosling before you do this, then it's just an unwanted advance. 5'2", 110 pounds. In high school, I was on drumline. I played bass first, then snare, then tenors. Decided to try out for Carolina Crown on tenors. Guys kept making comments, she won't be able to keep up. She probably can't even play. I was the second best player trying out on tenors. While they were all whining about not being able to do stuff, I was just beasting it out and not saying a word. Frickers. I'm small, not fricking physically challenged. The frick does being small have to do with playing? I did a stay one night at college thing, and we started playing Guitar Hero, where everyone was strangers. The self-diagnosed GH-obsessed guy in college failed the song and passed the guitar to me, the quiet girl. During the intro he said, "Sorry, it's still on expert mode." Then I proceeded to kill it. They said it was because I was Asian. I tend to agree. That happened to me too. Before I was good friends with my floor mates, a bunch of them were playing Guitar Hero 3 on the couch. One guy that everyone already hated was just killing people because he was the only one who could play on expert. I just sit down and he goes, "Okay, we're playing The Cliffs of Dover on expert. Keep up." I got 99% of the song and he shut up for the rest of the night. Great guy now that I know him though. I'm currently looking for jobs in the craft beer industry in the Bay Area. People in the industry never treat me seriously as I'm a 5'6" beardless Asian man that only needs to shave once every 2 weeks. According to them, only hip guys with long beards and tattoos can be beer experts, and I obviously look like an 18-year-old high schooler that has absolutely no beer knowledge at all. I've read most of the brewing science textbooks. Heck, I even bought college microbiology and chemistry textbooks to read on my spare time to educate myself. I passed testing and other qualification exams, and I'm doing an internship in a brewery to get experiences, just to let the white folks know that, hey, Fergus here might really know his stuff. Maybe next time you hire a sales rep, consider the beardless Asian Fergus. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I've had an ex-girlfriend, teacher, employer, and parent tell me my musical career would go nowhere and that heavy metal is stupid. This year I got signed on to Napalm Records, one of the most reputable metal labels in the world, and I played Wacken Open Air, the biggest heavy metal festival in the world. They're still working their 9-to-5s while I tour the world doing what I love. New Year's Eve 1999. Myself as a 9-year-old was sliding down the slide at my local playground. When I got to the bottom, a group of about 6 guys surrounded me. Their so-called leader, who would have been 10 or 11, repeatedly asked me to hit him, thinking I was easy pickings, no doubt. I refused several times before he kicked me. I was sitting in the sand at the bottom. So I stood up and wailed the guy as hard as I could. I broke his nose and he ran off crying. Then his mum came back and asked me why I did it. The answer? Because he told me to. I had a guy say, "Man, you weigh 190 pounds. Nope, not even close. More like 250. They thought the Declaration of Independence couldn't be stolen. I sure showed them. I got engaged at 17, married 3 weeks after I turned 18. The entire family went bananas. My father told me I'd be living in a crap hole, never leave my little hometown, never make anything of myself, and to never go to college. My grandmother poked my now husband in the chest and told us to our faces that our marriage wouldn't last 6 months. I did go to college, I got an associate degree, got out of that hometown, bought a house, got a bachelor's degree while working full-time, sold that other house, built a bigger house, and we've been happily married for 13 years now. Longer than my parents' marriage lasted. And every single time we celebrate another anniversary, it's the greatest FU to my entire family inside my head. Never tell a girl they can't do something. Guy made my life hell for years. He had me convinced that if I left him, I'd lose the kids and he'd unalive me. He had all the money, all the power. He told me regularly that I was worthless and ugly. The phrase "piece of crap" still sends me into a bit of a panic if I hear it. He thought he was going to own me forever. I'd never make it on my own. I heard that every day. I'd be nothing without him. I'd be homeless. I can't do anything without him. Screw that. I'm making it on my own. It's a struggle sometimes and I had to ask for help in the beginning, but I'm happy and safe. More importantly, the kids are happy and safe. We don't have a lot, but we're okay. My God, well I have to think that he was partly telling you these things to stop you from leaving, as much as because he believed them. But nonetheless, well done for getting out of that awful situation and keeping the kids out too. I'm sure it took a lot of strength to get out of there, and you did the right thing. The jocks in my class were serious D-bags. I was friends with several basketball players and all were awesome people. The guys I was taking class with were just mean. They'd frequently try to injure lesser players to get us off their team. 2 weeks before a big convention, I was playing touch football when I was accidentally tackled and injured pretty badly. I realized that there are probably way more nice jocks than mean, but the ones I was in class with were awful people. Mostly because of them, I hated gym. I almost failed and didn't graduate because of it. I was a dancer, a serious ballet student. I was in the studio 5 days a week and worked out at home 4 days a week. In my junior year, 1989, I had to take the stupid presidential fitness exam. Fine. I did the stupid thing. The PE teacher said if I could at least not come in last, she'd pass me. I wasn't a great runner and I knew that. However, I came in above almost every single student in my class for leg presses, aerobic tests, sit-ups, and overall fitness. 2 guys beat me and I was the top female. The coach insisted I'd cheated. I had to do the test again. The very next day after school, it was just us. I beat all of my own scores out of sheer rage. When it was over, I tried to again explain that just because I saw no merit in dodgeball, it didn't mean I wasn't fit. I could do stuff with my body all of those jocks couldn't dream of. I still hold the record for the most sit-ups in a minute and leg presses for women. Screw jocks. People have been underestimating me all my life. My parents were both in the beauty business. I worked with them, helping them to run the largest beauty school in Oklahoma for 19 years. Since I was a man in the beauty business, everyone thought I was gay. I was a Marine from 1966 to 72. This was when the Vietnam War was going full blast. The war was very unpopular. Since I was a Marine, everyone thought I was a soulless killer. I was a professional musician for many years. Of course, everyone knows musicians are a bunch of substance addicts and drunks. In truth, I'm not gay, I'm not a drunk or a smack addict, and I've never killed innocent civilians. The point is that nobody knows enough about you to make judgments about you except yourself. All your life, people are going to assume they know enough about you to make judgments. They're wrong. However, that won't stop them from doing it. Some background first. I worked at my family's restaurant, and to avoid special treatment, I'd go by a different last name so nobody would know that I was the owner's son. So fast forward about a year and we hired a guy who I'll call Colin because that's his name. Colin was a major D-bag who'd try to unload his responsibilities onto me, and one day I just told him that I'm not doing his job. So, what does he do? He puts me into a sleeper hold and only lets go a second before the lights go out. As soon as he let go, I told him I was the owner's son and that he shouldn't bother coming into work tomorrow. He came to work the next day and we locked him out. He was fired. I mean, to be fair, he should have been fired regardless of who you were. Kid challenged me to Pokemon. I effed them up with Bidoof. I told some kid I'd kick him in the crotch. He said he didn't think I could kick that high. I kicked him in the crotch. I'm a 65-year-old woman and Reddit underestimates me all the time. Apparently, if you're my age and female to boot, you only play games like Candy Crush, never Skyrim or Diablo or Civilization or Portal. Also, I must not know anything about computers or technology. People are shocked and I suspect a little suspicious when I address those topics. I hope I've changed 1 or 2 minds about the possibility that old people are not all the same, just as young people aren't all the same. I've always carried a few extra pounds and I took a lot of crap from people, in particular in baseball. What people don't know is that I'm actually quite talented and faster than most people half my size. One time, some kid from the other team told me fat kids couldn't play baseball before the game, and I proceeded to hit 3 triples and an inside-the-park home run that game. During my college years, a drunken butthead grabbed me while I was walking home from the library, and he started feeling things he had no right to feel. Definitely an unwanted advance. I gouged that motherfricker with my keys. There was blood. I walked away while he kept yelling, "What the frick?" When I was 15, I was playing golf with my friend on par 3, waiting for 2 friends to finish putting when 2 D-bags came up behind us and told us to tee off. The rules of golf state that if there's another group on a par 3, you can't hit until they're finished. Yet these guys told me that I wouldn't be able to hit that far anyway. So, me and my friend waited until the group had finished before we teed off. I went first, took a few practice swings, they told me to hurry up, and then I slam dunked it straight into the hole. The look on their face was frickin' priceless. I mean, as good a golfer as I'm sure you might be, it does sound like karma might have netted you some incredible luck to show those guys. Unless you're playing mini-golf, in which case it's more possible. A hole-in-one on a par 3 regular course is wild. On holiday in Croatia, a drunk local accused me of staring at his girlfriend, which I probably was, and thought that he'd be a tough guy. He threw a punch, I blocked it and hit him in the side of the head, and he went all wobbly and fell into a hedge. Within 15 seconds, I'd run off and disappeared into a crowd. I'm pretty skinny, but I was studying Krav Maga at the time, and the whole thing happened before I really registered what was going on. I ran off because Croatia seems the kind of place where the police are going to trust the drunk local over the sober tourist. Hope the guy was okay though. People underestimate me all the time. I hated school and I was a very average student, but loved university and learning, and found stuff that I was quite good at. I became a CEO in my early 30s. I deal a lot with other big businesses and know most of my state's politicians, their staff, major corporations, CEOs, senior management from a whole range of organizations, but really, I'm just a regular guy. I like cycling, running, shopping, wine, food, I wear jeans, I go for dinner, no different to any other 30-something. My wife is a couple of years younger than me, but looks about 20. She still gets refused alcohol in some places. As such, when we're out, people rarely suspect that I'm so well connected. I'm certainly no butthole, but I've used my influence to have people fired or reprimanded. All in all though, I try to use my power for good. I've insisted on people getting pay rises or more senior positions. I never say, "Do you know who I am?" or big myself up, but it sure is satisfying to have influence. Recently, I dealt with a waiter in a major venue. Great girl, very professional, but stuck in a crap job. Turns out we had a major function coming up, I think 400 people in a conference. I insisted she be put in charge of the conferences, and my staff worked with her to sort all the details. Long story short, it was a huge success, and she's now manager of the entire functions component of their business. After a back injury which saw me in hospital for 3 weeks and needing to learn to walk again, my now ex-girlfriend told me to just give up grappling, that I shouldn't do it anymore at all ever. I put on a heap of weight, got out to 115 kilos, and was basically miserable as F. She ended up leaving me over my determination to get back on the mat. Nearly a year of painful rehab later, I won 2 super heavyweight state championships in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, plus took a second and third in the open divisions. 14-2 for the weekend. I received my blue belt a week later from my coach and friend Thiago Stefanuti, who stood by me through the whole thing. I'm now walking around at 95 kilos and getting ready for a major tournament on September 21st. Never ever give up, and more importantly, surround yourself with people who will help you achieve your goals instead of burying you with their negativity. What tip made you 1,000,000 times better at flirting? If you're in a group of friends, new or old, find a natural opportunity to hang back. Someone who's interested in you will take notice and take the opportunity to talk with you in private. Now, this isn't foolproof, but it'll at least give you the opportunity to feel for any chemistry between you. Be wary of one-sided conversations. If your responses are being met with mostly yeps and and nothing without meat, it's probably not going well. People love to talk about themselves. You should ask open-ended questions that let them ramble. If you actively listen, Google it, there's videos that help, and occasionally relate back to earlier conversations. Is this the same girl you were telling me about with the big earrings, for example? Or that's the place where Jim fell off his chair, right? You'll be a really good listener and people will love talking at you, sometimes too much. This advice is literally from the Dale Carnegie book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, if you would like follow-up reading. I remember going on 9 dates with a girl who just got out of a long relationship and just wanted to be friends. To which I said, "Okay, cool, let's hang out then." One night she was dropping me off at my place after a movie. She turned the car off, put her arm on my headrest as we chatted before I got out. I was fully in the mindset that we were just friends, so I shook her hand good night. R.I.P. me. Yep, good at flirting means also recognizing when the other party isn't receptive. If they're answering briskly and killing conversation, cut your losses and move on. Look, everyone's giving good advice here, but flirting didn't click for me until I heard it described not as a set of behaviors to look out for, but as an escalation of suggestive behaviors couched in plausible deniability. Put practically, if someone's doing something to engage you that feels extra, like lots of touching, looking at you in a way that feels a bit too long, or doing a lot of poking fun and complimenting you, then that might be flirting or it might not be. That's the whole point. Plausible deniability. They can safely disengage at any time. If you want to know if someone's flirting, you need to test it. You do that by escalating things, but just a bit, so that now you have plausible deniability. Touch them back in a comfortable way, maintain eye contact, or joke compliment them back. If they escalate back and continue to do so as you escalate in turn, that is flirting. Eventually, one of you will break cover and do something with clear intent. A kiss, approaching, asking for a number, or straight up telling you what you think of them and that you're interested. Otherwise, if you escalate and they don't change their behavior or they back off, then they were probably just being friendly and you should definitely take the hint and do the same. Don't know if that's something obvious to people, but it definitely wasn't for me, and college parties would have been way less fun had I not started doing that. Hopefully, this can help someone else as well. Haha. Well, while this is an excellent analysis and description of the flirting process, the narrator isn't super sure that knowing about it is going to help us know if someone's interested. I think a lot of us know it on an underlying level, and will continue to be just as good at judging or misjudging and self-doubting as we were before reading this. I guess that your description of gradual probes might be something that would be a good thing for people to keep in mind if maybe they're a little more timid or have a harder time reading people. It's not like you have to go for a kiss immediately. Baby steps, like this guy talked about. If they look directly at you while talking to their friend, it's a good sign, especially when they're talking to cops and pointing at you. That's when you know she's into you. Flirting around the cops gets awkward though. You should probably just follow her home at that point. By the way, don't actually do this. I read once that if someone looks at you after someone said something funny, the joker doesn't have to be you, and everyone is laughing, they like you. From personal experience, it's true. This is like 90% true. It could also be just someone you admire. I heard this many years ago and sort of mentally logged the idea. I found myself looking at good leaders as well, in the professional world. But yeah, mostly the girl I found cutest as well, outside my professional life. They make a lot of eye contact. They're interested in what you have to say and ask you lots of questions. They laugh at your jokes, even the lame ones. They initiate physical contact. They try to find space where you can talk more privately. This doesn't always mean doing the deed, but it often means they wish for more quality time with you. Don't take these as signs that a worker is interested in you. They literally get paid to seem interested in the concerns of every customer and client. Furthermore, any of these one signs alone is not confirmation that someone likes you. Everyone flirts differently, and some might not even use any of the above tactics. These were simply some traits that came to mind based off my limited experience. I have never been an expert at reading signals, I was always shy, but I think the most important aspect of flirting is demonstrating that you take a keen interest in the other person and want as much one-on-one time to get to know them better as a person. Some people will rush the bedroom aspect of dating, at which point their flirtations become more physical and obvious. But for most dating adults, signals are more subtle and revealed through conversation. Does someone spend a lot of time around you? I'm terrible at flirting, but that's my method. Hang out. Be with this person. See if you vibe. My Netflix and I are really vibing, I can tell you. Generally, there's no one thing that gives it away. Everyone says to look for eye contact, look for posture, mimicry, stuff like that, and sure, there's some truth to that, but nobody should be expected to keep track of all those things, and not everyone exhibits any particular one. In my experience, almost everyone can get a sense that someone's into them, but most people second-guess themselves until they convince themselves it's nothing. I say trust that sense. It's based off all these factors that we pick up consciously and subconsciously, and almost always it's not a coincidence. When you think someone likes you, you can test that theory in a few ways. A subtle but effective example is inviting them to something you know they can't or don't want to attend. If they express interest in rescheduling or finding some other time to spend time with you, they like you. Otherwise, they'll just say no, sorry, I can't make it. This works because you're showing interest in spending additional time with them. This event would be more enjoyable for me if you were there, that kind of sentiment. And if they like you, they'll be sure to make it clear they're saying no to the event, not to you. Of course, you could also just ask. In my experience, anyone worth getting intimate with is mature enough to deal with that question. Here are a few examples of things that have helped me give away someone's feelings for me. When they tell their friends about me, remembering my schedule or other similar information, telling me about their previous interests with striking similarities, bragging about themselves in ways that would make a potential partner happy, like, I give great back massages or I cook a mean omelette, asking what my plans are at the end of a party or gathering instead of their friends, looking for or grasping onto shared interests. Folks, don't take flirting advice from this YouTube channel. Hey, where else am I supposed to get advice for the fake arguments with my shampoo bottles in the shower? Just little body language clues. If she puts her feet behind her ears, she probably likes you. Does their body turn toward you or away from you when you talk? Do they mirror your body language? Those are good signs. Physical contact. Granted, not everyone flirts the same way, but it's a good sign if they touch your arm or the like, or you find them smiling the whole time that you're talking to them. So everyone at the jiu-jitsu class likes me. Glad to know they're not just trying to nearly kill me. Once I, a male, had a classmate, a girl, who sat beside me during class. She actually told me to save that seat for her for the rest of semester. She'd play footsies with me and hit me in my legs with her shoes and knees. She also asked me what my favorite drink was and bought me that specific drink during our finals. Semester has passed and I didn't push on. Ugh, I'm an idiot. When I patted my classmate on her back and shoulder telling her she'd pass the history test and not to worry, she gave a slight gasp and looked straight into my eyes. When they find opportunities to come talk to you more often when they don't really have to, and linger for longer than they have to as well. All the advice in this entire group, and I'm sitting here like, I'm so damn oblivious, I wouldn't even notice these things looking for them. I really don't pick up on social cues at all, though. Everybody's saying eye contact. Like, do you all's friends frickin' stare at the floor when they talk to you? God damn. The narrator, despite trying his best his entire lifetime, actually really struggles with eye contact. I've had another recent conversation with a partner about it, and I kinda just think it's the sort of thing some people have to get behavioral therapy to fix. Oh well, I've done okay despite it. Seriously, tell a bad joke. Look for laughter and smiles that shouldn't be there but are. Then it's you they're into, definitely not what you said. One time I got the courage to look at someone in the eyes and said, I need one of those hugs that turns into a fun romp in the bedroom. He laughed and said, me too, and then continued talking about what we were previously talking about. I thought about running face first into a wall. From those I've consulted, 40% think he's clueless for not picking up the hint, 40% think I'm clueless for not following up his reply with a hug, 20% think he's not into me. All of those are fair guesses. I was once hugging a guy and we did the whole slight pull away to look at each other thing, and then I kissed him. He did not kiss back and I was super embarrassed and we just talked for a bit and then I made my exit as quickly as I could. He called me later that night and was like, wait, did you kiss me because you like me? I didn't kiss back because I wasn't sure if you liked me. Some people just, I don't even know. When a person is making relatively sensual physical contact, please, and I mean please, get flustered, or at least mentally flustered. Don't ignore them because you've known them for a while, don't pass it off as a joke, look for some signals. You'll regret not doing so. I've never been oblivious, but gosh darn have I missed hints before. Instructions unclear. So if a girl touches my arm, I should start doing my taxes? According to Sherlock, licking lips, eyes cast down towards the other person's lips, quirky smile of the lips, dilated eyes, and if the person has long hair, tucking it behind their ear or other fidgety behavior. Please note I'm not Sherlock and I suck at flirting. When people go out of their way to do something for you or say they really like spending time with you. If you're at a bar and a woman makes eye contact for more than a second without looking away, shoot your shot. I actually feel sorry for women if more than a 1 second of eye contact will give people an in to bother you. As a guy, I enjoy looking at people, regardless of flirtatious intentions. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Take it from me. We were in a club she wanted to go to, she was checking the girls out and asked which one I liked. I told her the girl with the hair to one side. Now get this, my idiot self noticed that she put her hair to one side, but I thought nothing of it. I'm sure she sent out more hints and cues, but being a guy with poor self-worth, I brushed it all off. There's no way she's into me. I was so wrong. It took one of her guy friends telling me that she hasn't shut up about me all night to realize that, hang on, she does? Long story short, if you think there's a chance, don't be an idiot and wait for luck to punch you in the face like it did me. Take the chance. Even if you're convincing yourself she isn't into you, she probably is. I'm not good at flirting, but somehow I got a boyfriend. But here are the things my boyfriend told me he saw in me. Close contact, mimicking movements, eye contact, laughing at jokes, and even physical contact. These are only a handful of the things to look out for, but I hope it helps. This is good, and I'd like to add one thing. Compliments. They should be few and genuine. Try to get one in early in the conversation. They can also be used as an icebreaker. Avoid compliments about their body or physical attributes. Compliment their clothing, hairstyle, and personality. People will give a lot of clues subconsciously. Also, some actions are flirting for some, but just being friendly for others too. Pay attention to their eye contact with you compared to others. If one has a small amount of eye contact with others but a lot with you, generally it means they're at least comfortable with you. Physical contact is usually big for people who aren't already touchy. People will generally be more touchy with those they like. When in a group and everyone's laughing, people generally look at the one they're most comfortable with first or the one they like. Could be either or both. Action imitation is big. If you think someone's into you, do an action like hands in your pockets or something. If they copy, they probably like you, or are paying serious attention to you for some reason. If they laugh at your dumb joke, either they like you or the joke made them uncomfortable. Depends on the situation. Playing with hair is one thing that can mean something too, but people also just do that a lot anyway. Really, I'd say some things can be a good tell more often than not, but sometimes those actions can just be them being friendly. Unless it's blatantly obvious, it can be something else. That's why the communication or the risk of asking someone is important. It really depends on who you're talking to. My advice is to be observant. Some would prefer banters. Usually, when coming up with something witty, they return back what you said but relating it in a playful or opposing manner. I hope you get what I mean. Or playfully challenging your views. When it comes to touch, subtle touch on the arm or shoulders or patting the head and smile. Trying ways to hang out with you are also a sign, but some are a little more low-key, like me. That'll probably prefer showing a playful side when it's just alone. So, it is also a sign if they change their aura from normal or serious to playful when it's just you alone. I hope these have helped. Mirroring body language. This is a tactic employed by people who work in sales, and it's not always conscious. This is a psychological disarmament tactic we, as humans, deploy on each other. In the case of someone who likes you, while interacting, watch for repetitious patterns and mimic their body language. Eventually, if you cross your arms and the person whose attention you are seeking does the same, for example, you can rely on that being a good sign. That's not to say you need to reposition or fidget while interacting. Remember, being comfortable and at ease is a way bigger turn-on and ultimately lends itself to a more approachable experience for all parties. After all, acting natural is the penultimate Jedi mind trick. Everybody's social cues are different. Some may be more extreme than others. So don't take stuff from this thread as the actual truth. Some people are just really friendly. Yeah, as much as all the points being made in this video might represent interesting avenues to investigate or give you an urge to try new approaches, which is a good thing, I do have to stress this last commenter's point. There's no guaranteed way of any one approach working with everyone when it comes to flirting, and all of these should be read as suggestions rather than hard facts. When someone is usually composed in conversation, getting nervous and mixes up words when talking to you. For example, I met a girl and her friends, who became my friends too, the night before her birthday. I didn't speak much to her, but when we were departing, I wished her a happy birthday for tomorrow and she replied, "You too," and then got all flustered as she left the train. I watched her on the platform get teased by the friends. I tend to lean in a lot, or if you are the flirter, talk a little quieter so they lean into you. Kind of inconvenient with the COVID social distancing, but maybe not in the future. I've noticed that women will do little adjustments to you, like brushing off a little piece of lint off your lapel, or moving a stray hair off your face while talking to you. At least they did back in my rogue days. I read this too fast and thought you said lick your lapel. Huh. It's all in the eye contact, baby. The attention. If you feel like suddenly you're gelling with someone really well and you're spending a lot of time together, if they pay you compliments freely and go out of their way to be kind or helpful, then they're probably putting in the effort so that they can F you. Reading these comments, I can say with full confidence that I've never been flirted with. I think I'm going to cry, guys. Maybe one day. If you're interested in a man and you aren't sure if he likes you or not, strike up a conversation while standing and try to notice if his feet are pointing towards you or not by the time you go to part ways. I learned about this in my general psych class, and I can't remember the specifics behind why, or if this works for women. I don't think it does, and I can't remember why. This is a thing, but apparently if he's interested in you, a man will naturally point his body in your direction. Body movement or the way you speak. It tells a lot about the person on whether they're nervous or confident, and they usually change the way they speak when they're flirting, like their voices. Obviously, it depends a lot on the person. From my experiences in places like bars or clubs, it's kinda obvious if they're flirting with you, but in more daily places, you have to look for hints like excess of compliments or if they look at you too much. I've scrolled through a lot of advice online and someone wrote something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing here, when girls like a guy, they have a tendency for their voice to raise pitch when they talk to that person. Some poor idiot replied something like, well, that explains why every girl I talk to sounds like Christian Bale playing Batman. Needless to say, the drink I was drinking was now plastered all over the wall in front of me. The key to flirting is to literally not flirt. Be relaxed and be yourself. With the right person, it'll just come naturally. What I've seen the most: 1. Trying to get close to you or orbit around you. They'll try and stand or sit near you, perhaps even hover a bit. 2. Using any reasonable opportunity to touch you, such as throwing an arm around your shoulder or touching the small of your back. Hugging a little too tightly or for not too long. 3. Taking a notable interest in conversing with you and not really anyone else in the room or area. 4. Complimenting you over things that are sort of arbitrary, like telling you you're brave for doing something not even scary or difficult. They're taking any chance they can to make you feel good. This is obvious now, but asking you to hang out in public outside of where you normally meet, like schoolwork. If they're asking you to get a coffee or try a food place with them, it could be a sign they're trying to spend alone time with you and push more into your life. And 6. Hanging around to leave at the same time as you do. They might just pretend to look at their phone or take a really long time packing their bag, but happen to start leaving when you do, consistently, so that they can converse with you on the way out. All of these could be signs of friendship for some people, so it's definitely not foolproof. However, these are things I myself used to flirt or have been used on me. Okay, so if a girl you're friendly with compliments your jeans and belt combo when at a bar, is that a sign? When you're bad at flirting, it's not that you don't see the signals, it's that you don't interpret the signals correctly or convince yourself that it cannot possibly mean that when you see the signal for what it is. At its roots, it's a confidence issue, so it's not fixable by other people being more obvious or knowing what to look for. You gotta fix yourself, folks. Guys, if she touches you lightly at random times, if she glances at your lips in one-on-one situations, if she ever pretends like she wants to fight you or actually does, playfully of course, especially if it's a pillow fight, and if she laughs at what you say a lot, especially giggles, these are all signs. Also, here's a good anti-tip. If you build up a persona of being oblivious to flirting, then you never need to let anyone down again because you can just play dumb. It has saved me a lot of friendships over the years, and I'm the only one who knows that I'm not actually oblivious. It's quite funny to know that out of all the apparently oblivious cases we've heard about tonight, mostly guys, there may be those out there that are just actively playing dumb to save themselves and those hitting on them some embarrassment. Good on you for finding a tactful way, I guess. Breaking the touch barrier. A pat on the arm, stuff like that. Step 1. Be attractive. Step 2. Don't be unattractive. Mirroring. Take a look at your text and see if they try to use the same emojis or same words as you do. They could even mirror some of your mannerisms if you meet up. Well, at least that's what I tell myself. Eye contact. Who breaks contact first, or are they constantly looking around or behind you? Physical touching. Try touching the arm or leg and look for their response, like did they back away or shift or did they move closer to you? Smiling. Are they smiling at you or frowning? And then the obvious. Them making physical contact, mentioning future plans together, talking about banging or kissing at all, and winking at you. Girls will lock eyes and play with their hair or touch their forearm. Laughter, touching you. You should never interpret these signs as a done deal, but it means you might be doing something right. The only surefire way is this: if they behave differently towards you in a positive way than they do towards their friends. If she makes way more eye contact with you than she does with her other male friends, then she's flirting with you. If he makes way less eye contact with you than with his other female acquaintances, then he's flirting with you. This requires careful observation over time, so it's not appropriate for every situation, but it's really good for getting an eventual answer if you suspect a friend likes you. What's the most outrageous, elite snob you've had to deal with? I volunteered at a local library for 4 years. Most of the time, it was an amazing job, and I'm thinking of going to library school after college. But I do remember one lady who came to the front desk contesting a $1.20 fine, 6 books that she hadn't turned in yet. The situation escalated until she was yelling so loudly that a kid in the picture book section started crying, and she just kept saying, "My husband is a respected plastic surgeon," and "You can't treat me like this," and "It's the principle of the thing." She had a several $100 purse, designer sunglasses, and all that jazz. She clearly could afford to pay us, but she wouldn't. The situation didn't get resolved that day, and they still hadn't turned in the books. My manager, who'd taken a lot of flack from this lady like a pro, checked up on their account over the next few months. The fines kept building. After the initial grace period, it's 20 cents per book per day, and we called them multiple times asking for the books back, and eventually we ended up sending someone after the plastic surgeon's wife because she owed the library over $600. Sure, maybe we could have just discontinued her account and banned her from the library, but it was the principle of the thing. As a fire and EMT, we were called out to a house in a gated community for a person with chest pain and throwing up and a history of heart issues. We get in there in our boots and heavy gear, and the lady who met us at the door wouldn't let us in until we took off our, quote, dirty clothes. They weren't dirty because they'd just gotten back from the station wash, but they were still stained from the God knows how many fires we'd fought that year. So, Grandpa is presenting with type 1 heart block in the back with fading vitals, and we're sitting up front taking off our damn boots to not get the carpet dirty. The general manager at my job, I think he pulls like $2 million a year, refuses to use a pen if anyone beneath him has touched it. Ugh. I work as a bellhop, a valet, concierge, whatever. People throw keys at me, expect me to read their minds about what they need and what they want me to do. And it's people from the low range of higher income that are the worst, what I call les parvenus, something translatable to arrivists. I can attest to the difference between people who are kind of rich and those who are really rich. I used to work for a woman who was an honest-to-God billionaire, and she and her similarly rich friends were some of the nicest people I've ever known. When you have that kind of money, you kind of just stop thinking about it entirely. In fact, she'd always get rather annoyed when the subject of money ever came up. She hated talking about it. At least once a year, my mum will attack me for having too many blue-collar friends. Over the last year, I've bounced from blue-collar work to white-collar work and back again. I have more fun and make more money per hour in blue mode. And that is why some people go no contact with their parents. Better luck with the next group of people who raise you. Well, here goes. I'm an enlisted soldier working on staff with a bunch of senior officers. My wife and I had been on an adoption waiting list for about a year and then some. Well, one of the senior officers is always going on about her genius child. I get it, everyone thinks their child's a genius. Well, after a few months, her and her husband, another senior officer, get pregnant again. However, since she's a bit further along in her childbearing years, she goes and has some testing done. She comes into work and lets out a sigh of relief and says, "Well, the tests came back normal, but my husband and I had thought that if something was wrong," and then she looks at me, "we'd have let you and your wife adopt it because there's no way we'd be able to raise a genius and a handicapped child." I held my breath and almost bit a hole through my tongue. I've been in the army for almost 20 years, never actually had my feelings hurt, but that was rough. I live in Minneapolis. There's a suburb here called Bloomington and a small, elite, practically gated part of it called prestigious West Bloomington. I had a customer yell at me on the phone for reading her address back as West Bloomington, Minnesota. No, sir, it's prestigious West Bloomington. I was in Kohl's buying a shirt. Man and I guess his wife were looking at suits. The wife says, "These are all cheap. I just spent $3,000 on a bag. You're not buying a $300 suit. This is where poor people shop." That is not a nice thing to say out loud. I don't know if this was the worst case, but I thought it was kinda stupid. I was wearing a shirt that I liked. I got it at a clearance price at Kmart. I was at my friend's apartment. When he saw my shirt, he got all annoyed and showed me the identical shirt in his closet. He had bought it at an exclusive boutique in Greenwich Village. He didn't want his shirt anymore, so he gave it to me. This is why a lot of designers insist that any of their unsold merchandise is destroyed rather than sold to discount chains or donated. They feel it dilutes the brand value, and no one will buy it at full price if they know they'll find it at Kmart or somewhere else later at a discount. I had just graduated college with my bachelor's in biomedical engineering. I was in the first year of my PhD program and worked a part-time catering gig that I'd been doing on and off for a long time. A woman whose son I went to high school with, who'd subsequently gone off to Harvard, was at the event. Now, this woman had always been fairly nice, though I'd had little interaction with her in the past. She and her husband were both doctors, Harvard grads, the whole packet. I said hi to her as I was serving her table and asked how her son was doing. Her reply was, "He graduated from Harvard, is finishing up his second year of Teach for America, but he's struggling to figure out what he wants to do with his life." She then looks me up and down in my tuxedo shirt and vest, a uniform that I admittedly hated to wear, and she said, "I guess you can relate to that, huh?" I was pretty taken aback, but I just smiled and said that I was actually working on my PhD and this was a weekend job. The look on her face was priceless, but I judged the crap out of her that day. I'm glad she lost her congressional race that year. I worked at a country club once. Neighborhood members who lived in the fanciest neighborhood nearby were allowed to take their booze to go in plastic cups. In my state, open containers of alcoholic beverages are a criminal driving offense. They were also allowed to drunk drive home. One member was even allowed to do so despite being legally blind. The club was located next to the police station, so it's not like there was no police presence. The police usually just focused on pulling over the club employees, especially if they weren't wasps. So, if you drove a Mercedes out of the member lot on a Friday night, you were golden, even if you were off your butt. If you drove a Chevy Celebrity out of the employee lot, don't go a mile over the speed limit or you'd see cherries. There's this guy here who opened up a clothing store. His store got pretty successful, so he decided to open up another one. He chose the rich part of town this time, and it didn't start off too well. Nobody came in to buy anything. He eventually realized it wasn't due to his inventory or location, but his pricing. He raised his prices, and now that store is well off and making him loads of money. Good guys win, and elitists are paying for it. Not me personally, but my uncle started an architecture degree back in the day. This was back before the internet, so he turned up early on orientation day to enroll his second year. Turns out every single class was already booked up by students who were related to someone who could get them in early. Ugh. I worked on a construction site in Cambridge, Massachusetts some years ago. A woman parked in a parking spot that was clearly marked as a tow zone because of the construction. I told her she'd get towed, and she started going off about, "This is a free country, I'll park wherever I want," blah blah blah. So anyways, the state trooper on duty as our police detail gets involved and tells her she'd get towed. The woman flips her crap and starts saying, "My taxes pay your salary. You're lucky people like me employ you. You work for me." Blah blah blah. In the end, she refused to move her car and we had it towed while she was in the store. Fricking witch. I knew a cop who carried nickels to give people who used that line. Haha. Look, regardless of your social status, if you ignore an employee and a cop telling you about your incoming ticket, regardless of your social status, you deserve everything coming to you. Most cops I've heard of wouldn't even give the warning. Cambridge, Massachusetts seems to be a hotspot for weird snobs, as the next commenter explains. I have lived in Cambridge, Massachusetts for 2 years, and that former story does not surprise me at all. One time while I was bartending for a newly opened tavern, a customer came in and sat at the bar and checks out our food menu. We had these great soft-shell tacos on the menu. The customer wants to know if he can get them with corn instead of flour tortillas because of his gluten allergy. I told him that I don't believe so and point out that the food menu clearly labels gluten-free options, of which there are several, but I politely offer to check for him. I leave the bar, go to the basement to check with the chef. The answer was no, which I already knew, came back and apologized to the man that we were unable to offer corn tortillas at this time. He slams the menu down on the bar and starts screaming about how we're discriminating against him, this is unacceptable in this day and age, blah blah blah, and storms out without paying for his drink, which I then had to pay for because of my D-bag owner. Separate instance, but while working at the same place, had a black gentleman come in midday, have a couple of drinks, we had a very pleasant 15-minute conversation. After asking for his bill, he went on a 5-minute tirade about how I was racist for ignoring him, talking about how important he was, that he could buy this bar if he wanted to, and shouting so that everyone could hear, and then he left without tipping. No idea what that one was about. I was picking out some cereal. I'm not exactly swimming in money, so I buy the cheap knockoff cereal that comes in bags. That crap's delicious. This kid somewhere between the age of 5 and 7 picks out some of the bagged cereal, walks over to his mum to put it in the cart. His mum grabs the name brand box version off the shelf and tells him to put that one back, it's for poor people. I've got a friend who I've known for about 8 years now. We grew up together through our teen years and we still hang out. But this one time he asked me to hang out because he was feeling down. Being the good friend I am, I oblige. We meet up and it's silent for a few seconds and then he goes, "I've been feeling self-conscious lately." Being the self-important guy he is, it caught me off guard, as I've never heard him say anything like that. So I ask why, and he pauses and goes, "I'm feeling self-conscious because there's nothing left for me to work on. Like everyone else has faults and they have ways to better themselves, and I can't seem to find anything." I stared at him in complete amazement that he could even be so narcissistic. So I said, "Well, maybe you need to work on bringing your ego down to size." Okay, so maybe not so much elitism as it was narcissism. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I was just applying my Rimmel lipstick casually when a girl walks up to me and goes, "And what brand is that?" And I tell her. She then snorts and says she wouldn't dare apply such trash to her mouth, and flashes me a couple of Chanel lipsticks. As a guy, I've got to say I wouldn't go near a woman with cheap Rimmel lipstick on. I'm just kidding. Like most guys, I have no freaking clue what the heck you're even talking about. I was once invited on a trip by a college friend. One of the guys there was what you might have called an alpha nerd. Up until then, I'd never really given the whole nerd thing much thought. I casually played video games, read a bit of sci-fi, but that was pretty much my entire contact with this subculture. The 3-day experience made me loathe nerd culture with a passion. This guy disliked me from the moment we shook hands. I have no idea why, maybe my face was particularly punchable that summer. Anyway, this guy went out of his way to prove he was better than me because of his interests, which he talked about non-stop. Our entire interaction consisted of him trying to initiate a nerd peeing contest with a guy who'd never had any interest in such things. After I said that I liked insert mainstream video game here, he gave me an hour-long lecture about how Planescape Torment was the video game equivalent of Jesus Christ. I had no idea I was such a rube because I liked mainstream games, really. In the 5-hour train ride, I had to sit through the exposition about 3 pulpy fantasy novels about some dark elves. He spoke with the condescending tone of a college professor dissecting Dostoevsky. It's kind of hard for me to emphasize how constant these lectures were or how incredibly annoying he was. I've never to this day met a person who was so virulently aggressive and arrogant in such a passive way. I still don't understand what he didn't like about me. Some of my cousins went to this uppity prep school with the kids of one of the wealthiest families in the world. This is what my aunt said about their mother. "She doesn't look like all the other moms around here. She looks like crap." In reality, the woman was simply a well-dressed hippie. This same aunt also complained about how one of the Jewish parents took her remarks about him being a penny pincher the wrong way, so she bought him a Blu-ray player to make up for it. One more story, the same aunt also paid my other cousins 50 cents an hour and half a mustard sandwich to pick out all the rocks from the beach of her lakefront home so she could have a sandy shoreline. What the hell? My girlfriend has a friend who has rich parents. Well, not that rich, but well-financed. She has these weird rules, like she can't drink coffee at the cheap little coffee place. She must have it at the coffee shop where it costs twice as much. She can't wear silver jewelry because gold is better, and she can't buy clothes from sale. Another of her friends is also from a rich family. My girlfriend and I are both from poor families, got our money by ourselves, never got any help from our parents. We're quite frugal because otherwise we wouldn't afford to eat anything. Well, my girlfriend and her friend were just talking, and my girlfriend said something about trying to save money. This girl just snapped at my girlfriend and told her to loosen up. It's been quite easy for her. She gets everything paid for by her parents, including trips to the nice holiday resorts in southern Europe. Ew, that's the second rich person story where the individual in question hasn't shopped at a place because it's under a certain price. I don't know that I'll ever understand it. And sadly, it seems like her parents might be working their influence. Let's hope she's not beyond saving eventually. Working at a liquor store years back. This guy comes in, I won't even try to describe him because he was dressed like such a clown. Wants a pack of smokes. He looks like he could be under 18. I ask for his ID. His response, "Yeah, I've got my ID," holds up his phone. It's a picture of him with a happy number of $100 bills. I say nothing. "Money," says he. I say nothing. "Money is my ID." I still say nothing. He continues stressing how money is his ID and continues insinuating he has lots of it. I finally break my silence. "I need to see a valid state ID." Hubbub and complaints ensue. Assertions such as, "I never show my ID," and claims that I suffer from some sort of jealousy. I reiterate my position. "I love selling things. Big fan of capitalism I am. I just need to see your ID." He finally leaves after some more impotent hubbub. Parting shot, "You're just mad I drive a nicer car than you." It was a nice car, I admit. Rich kids of Instagram. Check out the account and prepare to hate the human race. When people in my neighborhood park in a no parking zone at the end of the block by the stop signs instead of driving halfway up the block and parking there, it's the ultimate, everyone else has to do it right, but the rules don't apply to me action, and it drives me insane. Not first-hand account, but on good authority. A friend of mine knew a guy in the oil industry who used to have the bank exchange his bills for crisp new ones. His explanation was, "I wouldn't drive a 2-year car, why would I use 2-year-old money?" During Hurricane Sandy, I saw the craziest thing. There was an intersection covered in downed wires and had just been blocked off by the cops. As they were leaving, a woman drives through the first set of tape. She's old and they get that. They turn around, lights and sirens going to try to get her to pull over. She goes through the second set of tape. They get on the loudspeaker and tell her to pull over. They don't want to ruin the tape any further, so one of them gets out and chases the woman's car down on foot. He calmly asks her, "Ma'am, did you see my lights and sirens?" She answers, "Damn right I saw your lights and sirens. Why would I pull over for you? I pay my gosh darn tax dollars to you and I just want to enter my house." He calmly stated to her that she just ran over 21,000 volts of potentially live wire and had just endangered both of them. He then had to explain backfeed as people's generators put power back into wire and make them live again. She did not give a single crap and kept yelling until she was issued a ticket for failing to yield for an emergency vehicle, reckless endangerment, and going through barricades. She was not happy. He then went back to help his partner fix the barricade tape that the woman had broken down. Because there were so many intersections that had been messed up because of the storm, they'd run out of tape to use, and they just had to MacGyver spare strips of tape together to get it all back up. In short, a woman thought she was too rich to be zapped by 21,000 volts. I was once at our family friend's annual Christmas Eve party, and this family always comes who honestly no one likes. I guess the dads are friends, the host and the crap family, so they get invited. Anyway, they're pretty well off. The dad is kind of erratic and his kids are real pieces of work. The daughter once told us a story of how she was attending one of her private school parties at some kid's mansion, and an outsider arrives with a couple of girls. One of them's a fellow student of hers. He showed up in some kind of modded Nissan or Integra, and with his gregarious nature, he was quickly able to win over the hearts and minds of the wealthy kids he'd infiltrated. Well, she was miffed. Miffed, I say. Her comment to us was, "Who is this guy showing up in a Nissan? Ugh, totally not one of us." Or something to that effect. Made her sound real crappy, but then again, she always sounded real crappy. My first 2 years of high school was at an international college prep seminary. You were there because you were rich or you were smart, very rarely both. I was in the smart crowd. As a freshman, I made some initial friends through the orientations who happened to be loaded. We got along for the most part, but the difference in our background came slamming into view during the Christmas season. When I got back to school, we were all sharing our holiday experiences. My friends talked about how they got cars and weren't old enough to even have a permit yet, jet skis, and spent the holiday on a family-owned island or some other far-off exotic destination, or how their father brought them 25 grand in stocks. I remember talking about how I just enjoyed my time off at home, got some CDs and video games, and a sweet new pair of boots. I got ripped on for being the poor kid and they never let me forget it. I remember them saying how the school just lets anyone in here these days. I thought I'd point out, in case there were any outraged elites watching, that this kind of buffoonery happens across all classes. People with any advantage over a lower strata of society will inevitably start feeling entitled because of that power. I went to a low-decile school with a lot of students on the lower income brackets, and you can bet we always found someone lower than us to make fun of because we were little crapbag kids. Ugh, be better than us. Although, let's be honest, the richer ones are worse because they have so many people to look down on. I was out with the family and my mother. We'd recently celebrated her birthday. We had a fancy schmancy chocolatier in town, so we decided to treat my mum to a delicious chocolate treat. My dad-in-law asks if they have anything with caramel. The proprietor responds, "Caramel is oil and high fructose corn syrup. I do neither. Try the Walgreens down the street." He cocks his thumb over his shoulder. My father-in-law asks, "Well, could you explain what you do have?" The proprietor then said, "I already have no respect for you, but I will explain." When I paid the bill, I told him he was rude and he should stay in the kitchen and leave the counter to those who have a personality and know how to treat people with respect. He told me my money was not welcome in his store and asked me to leave. We all gladly left. Before then, I'd told nearly everyone who'd asked what's good downtown about this chocolatier. No more. Now I tell everyone what a butthead he was. In short, fancy schmancy chocolatier is a butt. Now I badmouth him. I actually witnessed this yesterday eating at Shake Shack with some friends. If you know Shake Shack, then you understand how busy it gets. Well, there was this woman with her 7-year-old waiting for a seat. She wasn't there very long, maybe 5 minutes or so. So this boy walks right past her and she grabs his arm, saying that she was waiting for the table that he was walking towards. He begins explaining that he was with his friends and was going to sit with them. She starts yelling at him, "How could you take a 7-year-old's seat? You're embarrassing yourself. I'm going to get the manager. I'll make sure you never get a job here," as well as other rude remarks. Then she looks at everyone else sitting in the area and shouts that someone should get up for her and her kid, and then shamed us for not getting up. Meanwhile, the place was filled with kids and their parents who patiently waited for a seat like the rest of us. Then the poor boy that got yelled at left because he was confused and embarrassed to heck. She then started talking to his friends, sitting them down, asking them rudely what school they went to, as if she was going to tell on them or something. She finally got a seat and stopped whining, but as we were leaving, my 2 friends who were the last to get up from our table noticed she actually did get to the manager to complain about the boy. What a witch. What's a 5-star meal on a budget? Okay, as the Russian, I'm telling you potato is best food there is. It's cheap, you can cook it multiple different ways so you won't get tired of it, also won't get bad easily, or get rotten. My ancestors survived cold winters and wars just by eating potato. You can slice it into thin slices and fry or just boil it with hot water or oven it, barbecue it, literally everything. Potato is best. I make hobo dinner when I go camping. Ground beef, onions, carrots, potatoes, and a bit of garlic. Wrap it all in tinfoil, I prefer the non-stick kind, throw it on some coals on your campfire. My friends who've never camped with me are always impressed. Spog, or salt, pepper, onion, garlic, is a basic seasoning base in the cooking world that's used in crazy amounts of food. That crap is amazing without adding any other flavors, but you should add some smoked paprika to the mix anyway. Baked potato with cheese and broccoli on top. Buy a pound of baking potatoes, a block of cheese, and a frozen bag of broccoli. It'll make you at least 3 to 6 of those. If you're feeling really crazy, you can throw in some chili as well. Canned chili for hot dogs works best. It can be as cheap as like 50 cents. I came here to say baked potato. I grew up so broke that we had potatoes at least once a day. There are so many ways to make them. Potato cakes were a staple. Just mashed potatoes mixed with flour and an egg to bind it. Fry that up in some oil. Horrible for you, I'm sure, but it's delicious. Sometimes Little Caesars throws pizzas in the dumpster outside after close. When I was homeless, I dated the night manager at McDonald's. I got a sack of dumpster-bound burgers big enough to feed me for the next 24 hours, and all it cost me was doing the deed with someone I was already boinking with anyway. Buttered toast with cinnamon and sugar. We used to keep a pre-mixed container of cinnamon and sugar because we ate this so frequently as kids, and my mum got sick of helping us fix our gosh-awful proportions. Buttered noodles. Spaghetti with oil and garlic. Quick, easy, and cheap. White bread garlic toast. Fried eggs and toast. The narrator is ashamed to admit that he's grown luxurious in his old age and primarily eats fancy sourdough and exclusively poaches free-range organic eggs. But no judgment if you're on a tighter budget and can only do white bread. I was a single mom in university. To stretch my budget, I made homemade soups. Every day for years, I had homemade soup for lunch and sometimes dinner as well. Do you have any tips for making your own soup? First, homemade stock. Bones, water, apple cider vinegar, and salt. I just learned this one a year ago, and the apple cider vinegar is the key. Google stock with ACV and you can get the right proportions. Second, dried beans are cheaper and better than canned. Check out the video Carla Make Beans on YouTube. 3. I do a lot of the tedious work ahead of time. I'll peel and freeze garlic cloves. I find they're easier to slice thin when they're frozen. I'll also cook and freeze other veggies I plan on using so I can stock up when things are on sale. And 4. For recipes, my favorite site is allrecipes.com. Stir fry, chicken and rice, and tears. So many tears, instead of soy sauce. It's lower sodium. Pour dessert, flour tortilla with butter, cinnamon, and sugar. Cream cheese and jam is also really good on a tortilla. Only had the chance because we got cream cheese from the food bank that one time, but damn. Ramen, drained with no broth, with poor man's pad thai sauce. Basically, you mix a tablespoon of peanut butter into a small ramekin with enough soy sauce and sriracha to be able to thoroughly mix it into a smooth sauce. Dump it over the cooked ramen and baby, you've got a stew going. It tastes good, it's got a bit of protein, bit of fat, bit of carbs, little sweet, little heat. It's not the greatest nutrition you could eat, but it's way better for you than Oreos, and if you want to clean up the macros a little, you can sub PB2 for the peanut butter and coconut aminos for the soy, and that'll cut the fat and sodium in at least half. And it's vegan, if you care about that at all. I've been making this basically exactly the same way, and I can't recommend enough adding any kind of acid, whether lemon or lime or whatever. It really turns it up to 11 by making it less heavy and having more complex flavors. Also, put an egg on top. Just do it. Potatoes in every way possible. Wow, so many fellow spud enthusiasts. To set the record straight, I'm a female, French by blood, raised by Lithuanians, and not an Irishman. I see ya, latkeys. Serious answer here, get a can of black beans and some cheap salsa. Put the drained beans and some salsa in a skillet and let it cook for like 10 minutes. Crack a couple of eggs and let them poach in the beans. Serve with cheap bread or tortilla. All very cheap ingredients and it's super high in protein, so it's filling and healthy. You can also saute in any veggies you have sitting around, or put in whatever spices you have lying about. A couple of people are mentioning shakshuka. That's where I got the inspiration for this dish. My boyfriend doesn't like tomatoes, but we love Tex-Mex flavors, so I made up this altered version for us. Macaroni and cheese. Grilled cheese sandwich. Okay, I'm getting lots of replies from people making some fancy as all heck sandwiches, and don't get me wrong, I'm not mad about it, but a cheap grilled sandwich made with stale white Wonder Bread, I can't believe it's not butter, and some Kraft singles holds a special place for me. Ramen with a side of ramen flushed down with water. Save some crunchy ramen in the beginning, then sprinkle it on top at the end. Picante beef is the best flavor. Poor man's stew. Ground beef, potatoes, and onions. Let the potatoes and onions cook with the already cooked ground beef in a pot of water. Add salt and pepper to taste. Yum. Quesadilla. Basically just a more ethnic grilled cheese. Straight up peanut butter. Don't say you've never filled up that way. It can be a great survival food too. Take a jar of peanut butter, throw in some nuts and raisins and toss it in a backpack, and you have a delicious, high-carb, high-protein, high-energy snack that can keep you going for days in a tough situation. A grilled cheese sandwich with a side of Campbell's bean and bacon soup. It'll set you back about at $1.50. Campbell's tomato soup is also an excellent side. Walk-in tacos. Basically, you get a snack-sized bag of your favorite chips and fill it with taco meat, lettuce, tomatoes, sour cream, and stuff like that. Now you have walk-in tacos. For those wondering or asking, I was showed this a few years ago by my cousin that worked for a traveling carnival. We've used everything from Yardbirds to McDonald's patties for the meat. Walk-in taco or taco in a bag, walk-in taco sounds better in my opinion, it's like BK. It's have it your way. Make it how you want. Yes. Classic Midwestern dish. Classy and convenient. Here's some tips though. Use Doritos. Crush them up before you put anything in. You don't need cheese when using Doritos unless you want that extra cheesy goodness, which I highly recommend. And for some reason, they just taste better when you eat it with a plastic fork. They just do. Beans on toast with some grated cheese on top. A campfire and a can of beans. Hopefully baked beans, but whatever the food shelf is providing that day is all right. I put some mac and cheese inside a grilled cheese sandwich. Delicious. The narrator can confirm that at his gamer bar lately, he had a gourmet fried sandwich that weirdly had mac and cheese inside, and it was actually damn good. And I'm certain that a non-gourmet version would hold true to the same standard. Beans and rice. You can get massive bags of dried rice and beans for pretty cheap at wholesale stores, and a big bag will last you a long time. Add a little butter and some cheap spices, and you've got yourself a tasty and healthy meal. Sleep. I've had to sleep through dinner and breakfast many times. Hope all of you who are currently in that situation will have better days. They're coming, trust me. Crap on a shingle, aka creamed chipped beef on toast. Such an underrated dish. Is it a Midwestern dish? Because some people look like I'm crazy when I mention it. Add some peas to throw in some extra fiber. Shepherd's pie. Canned corned beef hash. Enough salt to pickle ya, but absolutely delicious on buttered bread. Mac and cheese with cut-up hot dogs. Did nobody else have rice with ketchup or butter growing up? I forgot about buttered rice. But with a little butter, flour, and either milk or broth, you can have rice and gravy. Cheap, delicious calories. 333 chili. Super easy, cheap, and satisfying. I say 333 because all it needs is 3 kinds of canned beans, peppers, and 3 onions. I use a serrano pepper as well because I like the heat. Add 2 tins of canned tomatoes, chop and mix everything, let it simmer on a stove uncovered for at least 1.5 hours. The longer the better. Add any kind of broth as needed. It's filling, cheap, and awesome. Serves 4 or more. A perfectly soft-boiled egg. Can I offer you a nice egg in these trying times? Boil 1 cup of white rice for 20 cents, add cilantro if you have it, prepare 2 cups of black beans, it's about $1.39, soak 24 hours or cook in an Instapot from dry. Melt a tablespoon of neutral oil of choice. I prefer olive, but butter works. Olive oil is pricey, so butter is a go for a poverty budget. Dice a half onion, 25 cents, and fry in oil. When translucent, add soaked beans to the fried onions, stir in oregano, cayenne, chili pepper, cumin, black pepper, garlic salt, and a teaspoon of lime juice concentrate. Let the flavors mingle until cooked. This will make you a dish that's under 50 cents total per serving. Scoop beans over some rice, and as an option, you can top it with a little cheese and sour cream or diced tomato for 75 cents. The upfront cost really isn't much, and you can stock it in bulk. 1 batch costs about $3 and makes 4 servings. Don't skimp on the oregano. You can get a lot of it for cheap. Start grating your own cheese. That bagged crap is stupid expensive. You can get a lot more variety, better flavor, and more volume if you grate your own cheese. I used to love pork and beans as a kid, sweet beans and cut-up hot dogs. Loco Moco, white rice, hamburger patty, gravy with an egg on top. Chili on baked potatoes. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Every cuisine in the world's poor people dishes are usually their best ones. Maybe I'm just generalizing. For example, white gazpacho from Spain was a peasant meal. The base of it is garlic, stale bread soaked in water to soften it, and almonds. American barbecue could actually be the poster child of this idea, in my opinion. A basic Korean meal can be very cheap. For example, white rice, kimchi, doenjang jjigae, similar to miso soup, some other side dishes like prepared bean sprouts, pickled radish, and cucumbers, fried egg on top of the rice, bonus if you have some dried seaweed to wrap the rice in with your chopsticks. This is a bit basic, but mixing all of the banchan and rice with some red pepper paste or gochujang and sesame oil, you can make a bibimbap, which is awesome. Cacio e pepe. It's just spaghetti with a sauce that you make from reserved pasta water, a crap ton of parmesan, and black pepper. It's delicious, and since the cheese is going to be melty, you don't need high quality. Just one step above sawdust shaker cheese. French omelettes. Eggs, milk, butter, salt and pepper. It does require some practice to make them right, but after you do, you'll have a quick and delicious meal in a second. I forgot to put the word cream after milk actually. The ingredients are eggs, milk, cream, butter, salt and pepper. Also, I know some places will say it doesn't need milk cream, but the scary Frenchman who taught me this dish says it goes with milk cream, so I'm sticking with it. Eggs in a basket, sometimes called toad in the hole. Cut out a circle in a piece of bread, toast it up in a pan with melted butter, crack an egg in the middle, and use bread remnants to dip in the runny yolk. So simple, but it feels fancy. What is this? I think you'll find toad in the hole is actually sausage in Yorkshire pudding. In the UK, what you're describing is called egg in the hole. That is the narrator's experience as well. Although it does make me wonder why toad in the hole is called toad in the hole, as there is no hole cut in anything, nor is the meat remotely reptilian. Up next, a mega comment about how to get the most out of your rice. Congee. Add rice and lots of water to a pot, keep it plain or sprinkle some chicken bouillon powder and fresh ginger slices. Cook until it reaches creamy porridge consistency. Top your bowl with scallions. I make this when I'm feeling sick since it's easy on the stomach. And if you'd like to level up the dish, here are some tips from my Cantonese grandma who's been doing this for the last 60 years. You can marinate the rice in sesame oil overnight in the fridge, just enough to coat the rice granules. It makes it a better consistency. Short grain rice is best. For a bad time, use basmati or brown rice. Scallions are awesome. Coriander is good too if you're one of those lucky people who's blessed with the genes to enjoy it. Deep-fried garlic mince brings all the boys to the yard. If you're feeling rich, throw in a bunch of dried scallops. If you're using dried scallops, don't add any salt until the scallops are properly cooked. Dried scallops have quite a lot of salt content and it all gets released once they soften up. Drop an egg in right at the end and let the heat cook it. Has to be a room temperature egg, otherwise it won't cook well enough. Best is when the yolk is almost runny. Drop in some Chinese rice wine at the end for something different. If you're feeling lazy, throw it all in the rice cooker using 3 times the amount of water you'd normally use. When it's done, it'll still look like rice, but you'll have to stir it up a little to make it into a congee. Add boiling water for the desired consistency. If you have to boil it on the stove, use high heat, not low. High heat makes it boil and keeps it circulating. Low heat lets it sink to the bottom and hence is more prone to burning. Once it burns, the whole pot of congee is ruined. If you absolutely have to salvage burnt congee, do not scrape the bottom because scraping will release even more burnt congee. Add lots of ginger and garlic to try masking the burnt flavor. But I think you're better off disposing it and chalking it up to a lesson learned. Congee is so cheap and life's too short for bad congee. If you have roast duck, save the bones and neck. Boil them into a broth and use the broth to make the congee. Add leftover shredded roast duck meat to top it off. If you can get some bacon bones, boil them into a broth and use them to make the congee. You're having prawns? Why not save the shells and heads and boil them into broth to make the congee with as well? In fact, use any broth to make the congee. It's better than using water by itself. Chicken bouillon works, but it has less oomph to it. Another way to add flavor is to boil some chicken breast and use the broth to make congee. Shred said chicken breast into thin strips to be added later to the mix. This makes a healthier congee with very little chicken fat and lots of protein. Crispy youtiao goes very well with congee. That crispy youtiao coated in soft tasty bits of congee gives a very sensual play on the mouthfeel. Pepper is very good with congee. Doesn't matter black or white. I suggest getting your hands on some Sarawak pepper. They're the best. Some people like their congee spicy. I suggest getting some chili oil and adding it to your liking. If you like century eggs, it goes very well with congee too. If you don't like century eggs, why not crack in a salted duck egg? If you've got some boiling hot congee, throw in some thinly sliced fresh fish fillet and let the heat cook them away from the stove. We'll almost always cook them to a perfect consistency. Usually use Haro-1 fish, but I suppose salmon would work as well. Serve congee in clay pots if you have some. Clay pots retain heat very well and keep congee hot longer. But if you do the above, I don't think your congee will stay in your bowl for very long. Congee brings back memories of times when I was too sick to properly stomach solid food. It's become a comfort food now. Grandma died from cervical cancer a few years ago. Ladies, please go get your screening done and get your Gardasil vaccination. Cervical cancer is easily preventable these days. Grilled cheese and cream of tomato soup. Mac and cheese with ground beef, taco mix, and baked in a pie plate with breadcrumbs and extra cheese on top. It's just amazing. Definitely rice and beans or lentils, but for a fancy-looking cheap dish, stuffed squash. Get a big squash, cut it in half, scoop the seeds out and fill the cavity with whatever stuffing your heart desires and circumstance will allow. Stale bread, cornbread, cooked rice, barley or really any grain, and just boxed stuffing. A bit of browned sausage can be nice, but you don't need a ton. Some salt and bits of herb like parsley or thyme if you have them. Bake it and you've got something that looks nice but didn't cost much at all. Eggs cooked in many different ways. I prefer omelettes with chopped veggies. Sloppy joes. Cornbread and pinto beans. I go with southern buttermilk cornbread and la preferida pinto frioles. The narrator really wants to try more cornbread. It's one of those things that we just don't do in Northern Europe at all. Like, it has to be good to have stayed in cuisine despite being regarded as a pretty humble dish, right? SOS. Hamburger steak on mashed potatoes and toast with brown gravy. That's much different from the SOS that I grew up with. The one I'm familiar with is also called cream chipped beef. It's chipped beef with white cream gravy over it, usually served over toast. Burritos. Rice, butter, and cheese. Chicken-flavored ramen. Tuna casserole. Cigarette and coffee. Cheese on toast. Toast one side of your bread under the grill on a medium-high heat, flip the bread, put your cheese on it, whack it under the grill until it's melted. Tastes better than a cheese toastie, but it's less cheese per slice. For sandwiches, ham, cheese, and salami is filling as frick on the right bread and costs next to nothing. Sausage pilaf. This recipe is cheap as dirt and I can recommend a few different things for it, but let's see what you think. Get cheap sausages, the kind you can oven cook. Chicken, leek, and sweet corn pasta. And then there's lapskaus, a Norwegian stew. Get carrots, a swede, lots of floury potatoes, and whatever cheap yet flavorful meats you can find. Anything with hot sauce, pretty much. 2 scrambled eggs, a wrap, and some hot sauce, and I'm good until lunch. The poor man's steak, seasoned hamburger patty with sautéed mushrooms and onions on top. Do you know a ratatouille was originally a poor man's meal? Well, you'd have to be pretty poor to eat a DVD. Hamburger helper or hot dogs and beans. I grew up with this stuff in Detroit. We were dirt poor, but my mother always found ways for us to have a good meal. Eggs scrambled into rice and a little bit of hoisin sauce, filling as frick. Asians have got it figured out, man. Can of soup and boiled potato. Little Caesar's pizza. Not the best pizza, but $10 for 2 large pizzas is a pretty good price, and it doesn't taste half bad. Bean burritos and quesadillas. Bonus points if you find a hot sauce that you really like. It's called Poor Knights, and it's basically cheese with toast or bread in a pan. Pretty tasty. Tater tot casserole. Microwaved baked potato. My dad lived on his own from age 14 and he had all kinds of poor man dinners like boiled chicken, and it's as bad as it sounds. My absolute favorite was pasta shells with cheese whiz and canned tomatoes. When I was strapped, I'd buy a 99-cent box of mac and cheese from Aldi along with a $1.45 jar of pasta sauce. I'd make the pasta, stir in the sauce, and add the powdered cheese. The sauce took the place of the milk and the butter, which were too expensive at the time. I could get 2 or 3 meals out of that. These suggestions have made me realize my family was poor when I was growing up. There's nothing like a campfire and a can of beans. Tom Waits' lucky day. Spam casserole. I don't know the recipe, but it's spam, elbow macaroni, and a cream sauce of some sorts. It was stupid cheap to make, and my mum made it a lot when I was a kid. I didn't know what por was, and I didn't know that was us, but I do know we stopped eating it around the age of 17 or so. That's when I was about 23. My mom was like, "Oh, you should come over for dinner. What do you want me to make?" I thought about it and was like, "Ooh, that spam casserole. Not had that one in ages." She was shocked and asked why I wanted it. I told her I loved that growing up. She then informed me she only made it because we were broke as frick and it was all she could afford to make, and she felt guilty for years that she made it so often. I simply told her, "Wow, I loved it. I thought we had it so often because I liked it." Oatmeal with banana and milk if available. Well, fried spam, scrambled eggs and rice. White trash fried rice, as I call it. If you want, you can throw in any veggies you have on hand. Personally, I just like the 3 main ingredients, maybe a little bit of soy sauce on the rice. Project donuts. Take some biscuit dough, cut holes in the center, fry it in a skillet, sprinkle some powdered sugar or spread cake icing on top. It's better than Dunkin' Donuts. Also, you can make donut holes out of the center. What do you think is the best joke on the internet? Why do scuba divers fall out of the boat backwards? Because if they fell forward, they'd still be in the boat. What's the main difference between an oral thermometer and a rectal thermometer? The taste. A man was driving down the road and his car breaks down near a monastery. He goes to the monastery, knocks on the door and says, "My car broke down. Do you think I could stay the night?" The monks graciously accept him, feed him his dinner, and even fix his car. As the man tries to fall asleep, he hears a strange sound. A sound unlike anything he's ever heard before. The sirens that nearly seduced Odysseus into crashing his ship comes to mind. He doesn't sleep that night. He tosses and turns, trying to figure out what could possibly be making such a seductive sound. The next morning, he asks the monk what the sound was, but they say, "We can't tell you. You're not a monk." Distraught, the man is forced to leave. Years later, after never being able to forget the sound, the man goes back to the monastery and pleads for the answer again. The monks reply, "We can't tell you. You're not a monk." The man says, "If the only way I can find out what's making the beautiful sound is to become a monk, then please make me a monk." The monks reply, "You must travel the earth and tell us how many blades of grass there are and the exact number of grains of sand. When you find these answers, you will have become a monk." The man sets about his task. After years of searching, he returns as a grey-haired old man and knocks on the door of the monastery. A monk answers. He's taken before a gathering of all the monks. "In my quest to find what makes that beautiful sound, I traveled the earth and found what you asked for. By design, the world is in a state of perpetual change. Only God knows what you ask. All a man can know is himself, and only then if he is honest and reflective and willing to strip away self-deception." The monk replies, "Congratulations, you've become a monk. We shall now show you the way to the mystery of the secret sound." The monks lead the man to a wooden door, where the head monk says, "The sound is beyond that door." The monks give him the key and he opens the door. Behind the wooden door is another door made of stone. The man is given the key to the stone door and he opens it, only to find a door made of ruby. And so it went that he needed keys to doors of emerald, pearl, and diamond. Finally, they came to a door made of solid gold. The sound had become very clear and definite. The monk says, "This is the last key to the last door." The man is apprehensive. His life's wish is behind that door. With trembling hands, he unlocks the door, turns the knob, and slowly pushes the door open. Falling to his knees, he's utterly amazed to discover the source of that haunting and seductive sound. But of course I can't tell you what it is because you're not a monk. I think I hate you for submitting this. Well done on making me narrate that on a rough morning, you absolute sack of steaming turd. My disappointment is immeasurable and my day is ruined. I promise I'll be mostly sticking to much shorter jokes from now, folks. Why don't you ever see elephants hiding in trees? Because they're really good at it. What does a robot do during a one-night stand? He nuts and bolts. 2 whales walk into a bar. The bartender asks, "What can I get for you two?" One whale goes, "The second whale says, "I'll go home, Frank, you're drunk." 2 men are sitting at a bar at the top of the Empire State Building when the first man turns to the other and says, "You know, last week I discovered that if you jump from the top of this building, the winds around the building are so intense that by the time you fall to the 10th floor, they'll carry you around the building and back into a window." The bartender just shakes his head in disapproval while wiping the bar. The second guy says, "What are you, nuts? There's no way that could happen." "No, it's true," the first man says. "Let me prove it to you." He gets up from the bar, jumps over the balcony, and plummets towards the street below. As he nears the 10th floor, the high winds whip him around the building and back into the 10th floor window, and he takes the elevator back up to the bar. He meets the second man, who looks quite astonished. "You know, I saw that with my own eyes, but that must have been a one-time fluke." "No, I'll prove it again," says the first man as he just automatically leaps over the railing. Just as he's hurtling towards the street, the 10th floor wind gently carries him around the building and into the window. Once upstairs, he urges his fellow drinker to try it. "Oh, well, why not?" the second guy says. "It works, I'll try it." He jumps over the balcony, plunges downward, passes the 11th, 10th, 9th, 8th floors, and hits the sidewalk with a splat. Back upstairs, the bartender turns to the other drinker and says, "You know, Superman, you're a real jerk when you're drunk." I think this is one of my favorites. "Doctor, will I be okay?" "I don't know, Mercury is in Uranus right now." "I don't do astronomy, doctor." "Me neither, my thermometer just broke." Did you hear about the cheese factory in France that exploded? Debris was everywhere. Oh, here's a classic. So a grandpa takes his grandson out fishing. The grandpa pulls out a smoke and lights it. The kid asks, "Hey grandpa, can I have one?" Grandpa says, "Does your Johnson touch your butt, kid?" And the kid says, "Well, no." And grandpa says, "There's your answer, you're too young." Then grandpa pulls out some whiskey and takes a few pulls of the bottle. The kid asks, "Hey, could I have a drink of that, grandpa?" Grandpa again asks, "Does your eggplant touch your butt?" "Well, no, it doesn't," says the kid. Grandpa says, "Well, there's your answer." So the kid pulls out some cookies and starts snacking away on them, and Grandpa says, "Oh, gee, kiddo, those cookies look pretty good. Could I have one?" So the kid says, "Does your Johnson touch your butt, Grandpa?" And Grandpa says, "Why, yes, it does." And the kid says, "Good, then you can go F yourself then." I was in the office today and the cleaning lady asked if I wanted to smoke Mary J with her after work. I turned her down. I don't really like high-maintenance women. Two nuns were sitting on a park bench when an undressed man runs by. One of the nuns had a stroke, but the other one couldn't reach. Four older gents who were college buddies met for dinner for the first time in 20 years. After ordering, one of the men got up to use the bathroom. One of the men boasted about his son. "My son's so successful. He started at the bottom, valeting cars, worked and saved money, and he just started his second dealership. For his friend's birthday, he bought him a Maserati." All the men clapped and nodded. The next man said about his son, "My son's so smart, he started as a junior aircraft technician at a small charter, pulled himself through engineering, and he has his own private jet company with millions in revenue. For a friend's birthday, he bought his friend a twin-engine turboprop." Again, all of the men wiped tears from their eyes. The third man said about his son, "My son is a hard worker. He started mowing lawns and went into trades. He's the president of a company that builds subdivisions. For his buddy's birthday, he gave his friend a new house." All the men clapped and sat back enjoying their son's accomplishments. The fourth man came back, sat down, and asked why they were crying. After finding out, he said, "Yeah, you wouldn't believe it, but my son actually takes his clothes off for money, and his birthday was last month, and 3 of his clients gifted him a car, a plane, and a house." A New York stockbroker finally cashed in and decided to retire, so he bought a ranch in Montana. On day 1, he's working on the fence, and in a cloud of dust down the road comes a pickup truck, and it pulls up beside him. Out jumps a big strapping ranch cowboy. "Howdy, partner. I'm your nearest neighbor from down the road a piece. I came by to say hello and invite you to a party I'm having Saturday night." "Well, that's very nice of you. I'd be glad to attend," says the stockbroker. The big cowboy cocks his hat and says, "Well, I should tell you there's gonna be some drinking." The stockbroker says, "Well, now I've been known to enjoy a good martini or two." The cowboy then says, "Okay, well, I should warn you there might be some fighting." This takes the stockbroker back a bit, but he replies, "Well, I'm from New York. I've seen my share of fights." "Okay then," says the cowboy as he's getting back into the truck. "One more thing. There's going to be some love-making too." The stockbroker replies, Well, okay. Say, what should I wear?" The cowboy says, "Oh heck, it don't matter. It's just going to be you and me." A Buddhist walks up to a hot dog vendor and says, "Make me one with everything." Bonus for philosophy nerds. Descartes walks into a bar. The bartender says, "Hey, Descartes, I just got this new import beer in. You want to try it?" Descartes says, I think not." And he vanishes into thin air. That one is very, very good. I don't think everyone watching this channel will get it, but it's good. Or maybe this comment will make those of you who didn't get it, you can Google Descartes and laugh afterwards. We strive for education here on Am I the Genius, as ever. Stalin is sitting at his desk, busy with paperwork, when his assistant bursts into the room and says, "Comrade Stellin, there's a clairvoyant here that wants to see you. He claims he can see the future." "Send him to Gulag," says Stalin. "If he could see the future, he wouldn't have come here." Dave knows everyone there is to know. Dave was bragging to his boss one day. "You know, I know everyone there is to know. Just name someone, anyone, and I'll know them." Tired of his boasting, his boss called his bluff. "Okay, Dave, how about Tom Cruise?" "No dramas, boss. Tom and I are old friends, and I can prove it." So Dave and his boss fly out to Hollywood and knock on Tom Cruise's door. Tom Cruise shouts, "Dave, what's happening? Great to see ya. Come on in for a beer." Although impressed, Dave's boss is still skeptical. After they leave Cruise's house, he says that he thinks Dave knowing Cruise was just lucky. No, just name anyone else," Dave says. "President Obama," his boss quickly retorts. "Yep," Dave says. "Old buddies, let's fly out to Washington," and off they go. At the White House, Obama spots Dave on the tour and motions him and his boss over, saying, "Dave, what a surprise. I was just on my way to a meeting, but you and your friend come on in and let's have a cup of coffee first and catch up." Well, the boss was very shaken by now, but still not totally convinced. After they leave the White House grounds, he expresses his doubts to Dave, who again implores him to name anyone else. "The Pope," says his boss. "Sure," says Dave. "My folks are from Germany and I've known the Pope a long time." So they fly off to Rome. Dave and his boss are assembled with the masses in Vatican Square when Dave says, "This'll never work. I can't catch the Pope's eye among all these people. Tell you what, I know all the guards, so let me just go upstairs and I'll come out on the balcony with the Pope." And he disappears into the crowd headed towards the Vatican. Sure enough, half an hour later, Dave emerges with the Pope on the balcony. But by the time Dave returns, he finds out his boss has had a heart attack and is surrounded by paramedics. Working his way to his boss's side, Dave asks him, "What happened?" His boss looks up and says, "I was doing fine until you and the Pope came out on the balcony and the man next to me said, 'Who the frick's that on the balcony with Dave?'" You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. An old man and his grandson were spending some quality time together on a rainy Sunday. They'd been planning on playing football outside, but it had started raining at 8 a.m., and it was now 5 p.m. with no end in sight. So, as they were sitting inside in front of a big bay window, and Grandpa is looking out at it raining cats and dogs, says, "Wow, it's been raining all day. That's a lot of rain." And the grandson says, "Yeah, tell me something I don't know, Grandpa." So the grandfather replies, "Your grandmother's butt can take my whole fist." I mixed up the words jacuzzi and yakuza, and now I'm in hot water with the Japanese mafia. A man goes to a funeral. He asks the widow if he could say a word. He goes to the front and says, "Plethora," and sits back down. The widow leans over and whispers, "Thanks, that means a lot." Another man approaches. He'd been a close companion of the deceased. He too asks the widow if he might speak and heads to the front. "Bargain," he says. The widow pats his arm. "That means a great deal." A man comes up and asks to say a few words. The widow gives him the okay. He steps up to the mic and says, with confidence, "Water pit." The widow gives him a small smile. "Thanks, I know you mean well." Two guys are walking down the street when they see a dog licking his pecker. One guy says, "Oh, I wish I could do that." The other one replies, "Well, maybe just try petting him first." A penguin is on a long-deserved vacation from the zoo. He decides to take a road trip out west where his car breaks down. Luckily, it's right in front of a mechanic in town. He drops the car off and tells the mechanic he's going to get some lunch. It's a really hot day, so after eating, he stops by the ice cream shop for a little treat. Walking back to his car, the mechanic tells the penguin, "It looks like he blew a seal." The penguin laughs. "Oh no," he said as he wipes his mouth, "that's just ice cream." I had a song stuck in my head the other day and kept singing it out loud. My wife finally broke down and screamed, "Will you please stop singing Wonderwall?" I said, "Maybe." "I hear you, dude. I was humming the chorus to I'm a Believer around the house the other day when my wife suddenly screamed at me to knock it off. This was really out of character for her, so I just assumed she was joking. Then I saw her face." People are shocked when they find out what a terrible electrician I am. A proctologist walks into a bank. He needs to sign a document. He tries to sign, but he pulls a thermometer out of his shirt pocket. Oh crap, some butthole has my pen. "Dad, the trash man's here." "Tell him we don't need any." A man sat down at a bar and told the bartender, "I bet you $300 that I can pee into the cup all the way over there on the other side of the bar and not miss a single drop." The bartender said, "There is no way you can do that. Sure, I'll bet you $300. The man then begins to undo his pants and lets it rip. He starts peeing all over the bar, spraying on the bottles and the bartender, not making a single drip in the cup. The bartender starts smiling and laughing and says, "That's it, you owe me $300. The man then gets up and walks over to the pool table and starts laughing and shaking hands with the men standing there. He walks back to the bar, sits down and starts laughing at the bartender and hands him $300. The bartender asks, "Why are you so happy? You just lost the bet." The man said, "I'm laughing because I bet those guys over there $1,000 that I could pee all over you and your bar, and you'd still be laughing when I was done." Classic sort of bar joke. I've got to say though, that out of all the jokes I've read out, I've only read the Buddhist requesting to be made one with everything joke before. So color me impressed at how many original ones we've had. However, I can already see that at least one joke from earlier in my life is coming up, so here we go. What did the sign on the door of the brothel say? "Beat it, we're closed." I went to the zoo and saw a baguette in a cage. I asked the zookeeper about it and he told me it was bred in captivity. One day, 3 people were stuck on an island with cannibals. The cannibals said, "If you do what we say, we won't kill you." So the 3 people followed the orders of the cannibals. They said, "Go into the forest and pick 10 fruits of the first fruit you see." So the first person came back out of the forest with 10 apples. The cannibals said, "If you put the 10 apples up your butt without making a facial expression, we'll let you live." The person then made a facial expression after the second apple, so they killed him. The second person came back out of the forest with 10 cherries. The cannibals said, "Put the cherries up your butt without making a facial expression." The person then started laughing at the 10th cherry, so they killed him. In heaven, the person with apples asked the person with cherries, "Why did you start laughing?" The person replied, "Oh, I saw the third person coming out with pineapples." "Doc, you've got to help me. I can't stop singing What's New Pussycat." That sounds like Tom Jones syndrome. Is it common? It's not unusual. What did Cinderella say when she got to the ball? I told that to my family when I was like 11. It went over well. Why did the blind man fall into the well? He couldn't see that well. This guy sees a sign, "Talking dog, $5." He walks up and asks the man, "Does the dog really talk?" The owner says, "Yup." Bullcrap. The dog pipes in, "Oh, it's true, I can speak." "Holy crap," says the first guy. "Yes, I started out in the circus as a sideshow until the CIA found me. They recruited me as a spy. Nobody suspects the dog in the room is listening to state secrets. After 2 tours, I retired here in the country to live out my days." My God, man, that's the most astounding thing I've ever heard. So why the hell are you only selling him for $5? The owner says, "Because that dog is a liar. He didn't do any of that crap." An English job foreman is hiring, and an Irishman soon appears requesting a job. Laughing, the foreman responds, "You? Hire you? I doubt you know the difference between a girder and a joist." After a moment of pondering, the Irishman responds, "Well, one of them fellows wrote Faust and the other wrote Ulysses." Mother Superior is sitting in the convent one night when she hears a knock at the door. She looks out at the peephole and, seeing no one, very cautiously opens the door. She's stunned to find 2 leprechauns standing meekly, hats in hand, on the steps of the nunnery. "My sons, how can I help you this fine evening?" "Well, mother, have you any leprechaun nuns at this convent?" "I'm sorry, my son, we've no leprechaun nuns here." "Well, mother, do you know of any leprechaun nuns anywhere?" "No, my son, I don't know of any in all of Ireland. And if there's none here, then there can't be any leprechaun nuns in the whole church." At this, the first leprechaun whips around, jabbing his finger at his companion. "I told you you've been doing the deed with a penguin." The divorce court judge says to Mickey, "Now let me get this straight, Mr. Mouse. You want a divorce from your wife Minnie because she's crazy." And Mickey says, "No, I never said she was crazy. I said she was effing goofy. Oh-ho!" 3 men went to hell and they stood before the devil. The devil asked the first man, "What did you do for a living?" The man answered, "I was a lumberjack." The devil said, "Then we will chop your manhood off." He turned to the second man, asking the same question he asked the first. "I was a fireman," said the second man. "Then we will burn your manhood off," said the devil. He turned to the third man, asking the same question he asked the other 2. The third man thought about it and finally answered the devil, "I was a lollipop salesman." A pair of hunters from Illinois are out in the woods. Whilst descending a hill, one of them suddenly cries out in pain and falls to the bottom, clutching his chest as he hits the ground. The other hunter rushes to his side as his friend noticeably stops breathing. Pulling out his phone, he quickly dials 911. After a few rings, the dispatcher picks up. 911, what's your emergency? The hunter replies, I'm out near Route 51. My friend has had a heart attack. I think he's dead. What do I do? The dispatcher replies, It's okay, sir. Can you calm down and make sure that he's dead? The hunter replies, Well, okay. The dispatcher hears some rustling over the phone, followed by the resounding boom of a 12-gauge. The hunter comes back on the line, saying, Okay, now what? This joke is courtesy of my stepfather and his old drinking buddy, the men of many laughs. What do you get if you insert human DNA into a goat? You get kicked out of the petting zoo. What did the fish say when it hit the wall? Damn. That's my uncle's only joke. Two windmills are standing in a field when one of them asks, What's your favorite kind of music? The other one says, I'm a big metal fan. There was this one guy who got a job at the pickle factory. He came home from his first day and his wife asked him how it was. He said it was great, but he couldn't stop watching the pickle slicer. He said he knew it was wrong, but he couldn't stop thinking about putting his trouser snake into the pickle slicer. His wife thought that was a little bit weird. Time went on, but the woman's husband only became more withdrawn. He was obsessed. Finally, she just confronted him. Look, I can tell this thing is eating you alive. Ignoring it isn't working. You just have to get this out of your system. Her husband croaked out, Really? Really? She exclaimed. I want you to stay late after work after everyone else has left. Make some kind of excuse, and then when there's nobody else around, just go ahead and put it in the pickle slicer. Then you'll finally be able to move on. He silently nodded his head, thanked her, and left for work. All day, she was thinking about her husband and the difficult time he must be having. Finally, he arrived home a little later than usual. He slammed his lunch down on the kitchen table. Well, I finally did it. I put it in the pickle slicer. Really? Asked his wife. Yes, I was thinking about it all day. Then, like you said, I stayed after quitting time and people had left. But my boss came back into the factory and caught me with my member in the pickle slicer. Oh no! She exclaimed. I got fired. He responded mildly. I can see why he'd be upset, but that seems a little severe. What happened to the pickle slicer? Asked his wife. Oh, she got fired too. When did fake it until you make it backfire epically? I was in a Skype job interview that involved multiple rounds in one session. I talked to person A, then person B, and then person C. During the interview with person B, I was asked to talk about one of my weaknesses after having already talked about one of my strengths. I explained that I'm very comfortable with creative problem solving, but sometimes I take for granted that the status quo exists for a reason. Person B responded, I see your point, but I don't think that's a problem in the grand scheme of things. You seem very entrepreneurial to me, and people with that motivation have a healthy skepticism for how things have to be. So that was a pleasant thing to hear, especially in an industry that involves bringing in new business and keeping clients. I thanked person B and told him I'd never thought of myself as entrepreneurial, but there was something that felt true about that description. Cut to my interview with person C. First question, what are some words that people might use to describe you? Well, one thing I've been told is that I'm entrepreneurial. I'm less of a leader and more a collaborator. I value creativity, and I went on like that. They answered, So, you've said you're entrepreneurial. What business have you started then? I might as well have quit at that point. Once I said, None. Nothing I said to person C was going to convince him that I wasn't full of crap. I told person C several projects I'd started that involved my personal initiative, taking risks and making proposals to people with the power to deny my idea or be a part of my team. The problem he seemed to have was that none of those things was literally a business. Guy I used to work with told me about when he used to work as an electrician apprentice at a plant. When there was nothing to do, which apparently was most of the time, the lead guy and him would walk out to a random spot in the plant with a ladder, a conduit bender, and a piece of conduit. Then one of them would stand on top of the ladder and the other one was on the ground holding the conduit, and they'd just chit-chat all day. If any of the bosses wandered by, they'd nod and pass the piece of conduit up to the guy on the ladder, who'd then make a show of trying to fit it in somewhere. Said that they both made it through 3 rounds of layoffs doing that, but they were ultimately found out. A lot of the big instances of fraud came from the fake it until you make it mentality. Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos were faking the technology until they could get it to work, Fire Festival was faking it until they could get the money together, Anna Delvey did intend to make it one day, but she Ponzi'd her way through until she'd get there. Dr. Christopher Dunch, or Dr. Death, was a horrible back surgeon, but he kept operating and working on patients anyway. I think fraudsters don't really intend to hurt other people, they're just grossly incompetent and trying to cover their own butts. Yep, I think this applies to the vast majority of failed Kickstarters too. Most of them don't start off as cons, they genuinely think they're going to make their project. Then reality sets in. The narrator has backed a successful Kickstarter that then launched a sequel that fell completely apart due to mismanagement, and a lot of people are calling a fraud now, despite its proven track record of actually working out for one time, kind of. At Nelson Mandela's funeral, people took note of the sign language interpreter that just seemed to be making random hand gestures instead of actual sign language. Turns out he had made quite a few appearances previously, and nobody had caught on that he knew literally no sign language. To me, this guy is just the poster child of fake it till you make it. This is apparently really common. A sign language interpreter for the city of Tampa, Florida, was fired after it turned out that she didn't know sign language and was just signing gibberish. Among the things they signed, according to Settimbrino, was the following. 51 hours ago, 0-12-22, indecipherable mess of hands. Murder 3 minutes and 14 weeks ago in old, more nonsense. Murder 4-5, 55,000, plea 10, arrest murder Bush, more nonsense, 3 age 24. I mean, it made perfect sense to me. I struggle remembering names. After first introductions, especially in large groups, I tend to forget them, and as a result, I just don't use names. It usually works out well until I remember them properly, but sometimes I'm put in the spotlight and things go south real fast. Just heard a podcast about a guy who lived on an army base for 3 years posing as a soldier until he got caught due to drinking and driving. The guy apparently was well known and went so far as to brief incoming soldiers on and even responded to a bomb threat since he posed as an EOD tech. The guy responds to bomb threats and gets caught because of a DUI. My gosh. Got a job working in an insurance company reviewing contracts. I had no frickin' idea what I was doing and thought I could just learn it and I'd be fine eventually. I lasted 6 months and they kicked me out. Similar story for me. Got a job at a mortgage broker. Their limited training was meant for people who'd already worked in the industry, not newbies like me. I'm good at test taking, so I passed the mortgage originator licensing exam on the first try. Had no idea what I was doing trying to sell mortgages though, and without income from commissions, I was making minimum wage. Eventually, the boss found out I was applying to other jobs and gave me an ultimatum. Quit looking for other jobs or quit working for him. I asked him for a box to carry my stuff out. The place went under in 6 months anyway. I went on to get a job I was qualified for that I've now had for 10 years. I taught some anatomy and physiology labs to pre-nursing majors. These girls knew more about the anatomy and physiology than I did. I'm an expert in ecology, but somehow I got the job of teaching this class. I figured I'd just look at the answers on the worksheets as the semester went on. When I finally got the student feedback, it was a blow to my sense of confidence. About half of them did indeed notice that I'd just been looking at the fricking worksheet answers. As a student, I had a professor in the exact same boat. First day of class, he said, "The buttholes are making me teach this class. I have a doctorate in physics. I don't know what I'm doing, but I have the notes from the last professor. Sorry, guys." Respected the hell out of him after he did that and didn't care that he 100% just read the answers. I hired a Mandarin translator for a game I'm developing. I ran her translations through Google Translate to find they were a good match. Too good of a match. Showed it to a friend of mine who's from China. They told me the translator just Google translated everything and that the end result was barely comprehensible. I play the piano, not well, but decently. I can't sight read, but I can practice from notes and play a piece of music. My friend was studying music in college and needed to find a piano player to accompany her during class. I told her I could do it because I played piano, but I didn't really understand what that meant. I assumed I'd be able to practice the music beforehand. They wanted someone to be able to play a piece of music on the spot, sight unseen, while she sang. I couldn't do it. I faked it for 2 sessions, and the instructor told my friend she had to get another accompanist because I was just not good enough. I felt like a real D-bag, I can tell ya. Went to visit my older cousin in LA. I'm a small-town girl. Before going out, he told me that the friends we'd be meeting were super snobby and would probably make fun of me if I told them I was from Culver, Oregon. Today I would tell him to get better friends, but when I was 18, I just wanted to fit in. We agreed that I'd tell them I'm from Portland. So the blonde bombshell in the group, 6 years older than me, starts talking to me while my cousin and his friends head off to buy shots. "So where are you from?" Portland." "Oh my god, me too." She proceeds to ask me which school I went to, which coffee shop was my favorite, and where my parents work. Just making polite conversation on her end. Of course, I do the adult thing and confess, I made up an entire fake life story. My cousin got back to the table with the shots, and I've never been more grateful for the opportunity to put alcohol in my mouth and stop words from coming out. At seeing me knock back my shot like an animal, my cousin forgets our cover story and loudly proclaims, "Good God, you don't have to drink it like you do in Culver, just chill." I did not look at the bombshell for the rest of the night. I have seldom wanted the earth to swallow me up as much as I did in that moment. This reminds me of that guy who moved to a new neighborhood for just a few months and decided to take some Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds to break in. They thought it was a good idea to go for a walk, and when he went outside, his new neighbor greeted him. Being on one hell of a substance and a bit of an introvert besides that, he avoided conversation by speaking French, as he knew just enough to get by, and didn't plan on staying there for an extended period of time. This went on for about 8 months, longer than he expected to stay there, and eventually the neighbor had a friend of hers over who also spoke French and tried to start up a conversation with him. That's when he was like, "Yeah, I don't speak French, sorry. I have a friend who, when she's drunk, likes to speak Spanish, except I taught her all the Spanish she knows and I only took high school Spanish. Anyway, I was having a barbecue and she hits it off with my friend from Peru. She speaks a little Spanish to him, they exchange numbers. She uses my wife, who speaks Spanish, to text him back and forth. They set up a date. She showed up to the bar before him. When he walked in, she gave him a hug and whispered, 'I don't speak Spanish,' and he whispered back, 'Oh, I knew the whole time.' Got a part-time job as a bartender to help with bills. Told them I knew how to bartend. I can pour a whiskey and coke and beer, so I just figured I'd pick up the rest as I went along. Right? Right? Well, the first week I was serving to get to know the menu, someone called in sick. The owner makes me bartend, so I'm doing fine, it's just beers and a few mixers. Then a party of about 40 people came in from a wedding and started asking for all these different shots and different specialty drinks. I totally crapped my pants. The narrator got through a better part of a decade in hospitality with a lot of bartending involved and still has basically zero idea how to make any cocktails, so I feel your panic, man. I was 8 years old and I told my dance teacher that I could do a backbend. I couldn't, so she moved me up a level in acro and put me in a special role for our recital. For the next week, my mum tried to help me get a backbend, but it was not happening and I had to come clean. Luckily, the teacher didn't get too mad. I had to move back down a level, but I still got to keep my special role. Okay, I guess it didn't ultimately backfire, but it's a pretty good story I was told in film school aeons ago. Back in the 80s or 90s, a guy snagged an interview for a camera operating job at a TV production company that was way above his experience level. The interviewer gave him a camera and said, "Okay, take this apart and lay it all out for me. You have 20 minutes, and left him there. After panicking for a minute, he walked down the hall, found a technician working, and asked him to take apart the camera for him, which he did. The interviewer comes back and says, "Oh wow, good work. Now put it all back together," and goes off to put out some other fires. Our guy tracks down the tech, who obliges again, and he was hired. When I heard this story, the guy had worked in the field for 15 or so years, so I guess things worked out. That's manager material right there. He delegated. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I took orchestra in elementary school and I eventually realized that I was just not going to understand violin, but I still wanted to be in orchestra because it had some perks. So whenever we had lessons, I put my fingers over the strings and moved my bow around like I meant it. When we had to play individually, I had to do it for real. I thought maybe by some miracle I'd get it and play normally. Well, I didn't. My parents have a video of me playing the trombone in the elementary school band concert after my flute broke and there was no other flute to give me. I told my mum before I was really nervous since I'd literally never touched a trombone. I sat down in my concert chair and the only other trombone looked at me and said, "Just slide the thing up and down and no one will ever know." And you know, I went hard. I was jamming out to Oates, Peas, Beans like I was a world-class jazz musician. My parents still bring it up that I faked it so hard. My teacher eventually caught on, and since we still had no more flutes, I was transferred to percussion and played the triangle. Yay. I worked as an accountant with a theatre background. I'm 6 years in and I'm working solo with nobody above me in the company besides the owners. I have an audit, a $16 million LOC to acquire, and another company we just purchased. This is the tipping point, I'm sure. Jesus. Is anyone on this plane a doctor? I'm a doctor. A real doctor or a PhD? I'm, PhD. I had a job that I was way underqualified for, yet I was still surprisingly given the offer. 8 months in, the fact really started to show that I wasn't the assumed genius or savior the hiring manager thought that I was. Fortunately, I got offered a different job by someone who wasn't really desperate to hire. I knew a girl who'd applied to jobs she was unqualified for, including a job at NASA and at Apple. She lied about her qualifications on her resumes. She landed several high-paying jobs but would get fired after a month or two once her co-workers realized she didn't have the skills to fulfill her duties. She'd boast on Facebook about how she'd landed her dream job every few months. Not sure what she's doing now since I haven't spoken to her in years. I believe she moved to another country. Oh, and she took credit for the Mars rover and for the Beatles on iTunes. That's amazing. I'm actually jealous of her ability to not give an F about getting caught like that. I'd be so mortified if I was found out. I'd hide in a meat locker until I withered and died of it. The humiliation would be too much to even cope with, and some people just shrug it off and are like, whatevs, on to my next dream job. The guys who act like they're ex-special forces on the first day of basic training because they were in Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps in high school. I remember one of them saying, I've basically already done this every year since I was a freshman, as we got off the bus. That idiot washed out by week 2. Dating a close friend that I wasn't even remotely attracted to. I thought the feelings that I was supposed to have would kick in, but they didn't. I got into a similar situation. I'd never been in a real relationship in my adult life, nor had I developed feelings for anyone since high school. Over the course of a few years, I slowly got tired of waiting for love to happen, and also felt self-conscious that I couldn't find someone I felt for. Then a friend of mine asked me out one day and I thought, oh, what the hell, coffee is cool and so is she, let's give it a try. I thought that if love wouldn't come, we could try to come to love. It didn't happen though. What did happen was a lot of hurt. She wanted more from me than I could give and at a rate faster than I could give it. I felt guilty and miserable just being with her. That I didn't feel the same way about her that she felt for me, and at the same time frustrated that she refused to take things more slowly. Those feelings never came, and after a fight, we decided to break things off. Climaxing in the bedroom. If you fake it at first, you're never going to make it. I was working on a tight budget on a magazine I edited way back when. We couldn't afford a fashion correspondent, so I did it myself under an assumed female name. I'm a man, and didn't tell anyone. Surprisingly, it was quite well received. Ran for 3 months or so before I got invited to a clothing launch. That was awkward. I mean, Fire Festival definitely comes to mind. That was just straight up fraud, though. Turns out you can't solve all your problems in your organization by telling everyone they should be more positive and only come to you with solutions to your unrealistic ideas. Who knew? Based on documentaries, it seems like they could have pulled off the cruise ship idea. There was a market for this event, people were willing to pay for it, they just needed people who knew what they were doing to execute it. I once talked my way into an internship with a neuroscience lab that regularly implanted devices into monkeys' brains as an undergraduate. Luckily, this did not result in any dead monkeys, as it had only been brought on to help process their data. However, the issue was that they were using MATLAB and I'd vastly overplayed a basic understanding of Python gleaned from a side project on algorithms back in high school. They also simultaneously tried to give a crash course in neuroscience to little old freshman me so that I could be vaguely familiar with the data I was working with. Fun fact, brain surgery is not easy to learn. Surprise! Yes, I was politely asked to leave after about 2 or 3 months of banging my head against the wall. Pretty sure I wasn't able to contribute a single line of code or useful data analysis to their project. I did get a cool ceramic monkey mug out of it though, which was nice. I mean, hey, that sounds like a nice mug though. So it really depends on your definition of making it. Some people in life will never achieve a monkey mug. Be proud of that. Not my story, but a senior back in my high school used to talk about how tough he was and how he was a black belt in karate and had plenty of boxing experience. He even brought his black belt, which I'm convinced wasn't actually his, to school one day to show it off. He eventually got the reputation of someone who was not to be effed with. He was a beefy guy, sort of a meathead. Anyhow, fast forward a bit and he was having a heated argument with the sophomore in the hallway. People were gathering all around to watch the drama unfold. Things escalated and he pushed the sophomore kid hard. The sophomore immediately responds with a punch square to the senior guy's nose, and he drops like a sack of potatoes. And then this black belt karate expert starts frickin' crying. I'd like to tell you that this was the end of the fight, but it wasn't. He gets back up, blood dripping from his nose, and swings at the sophomore with quite possibly the worst punch I've ever seen. Tears and blood are dripping off his face as he's throwing some huge toddler tantrum, just swinging his arms like a windmill and missing every punch. Some teachers came and broke up the fight, and both of them got suspended. The guy never bragged about his fighting experience again after that, and sort of flew under the radar for the rest of the year. When I thought I was cool enough to eat edibles with no tolerance, in Colorado before the airport to go back home. It hit me during the security checkpoint, the pressure behind my eyes began to build. The strange feeling of having to go number 2 traveled from my head to my toes, and at this point I knew I'd taken too much. I had sunglasses on, so only having to deal with security for a few moments, I was actually able to get through this with little problems. I had an hour and a half before my plane boarded. My brother met a girl, he'd also eaten edibles but had a tolerance, and was walking around with her while I was too high to function. The terminal was full, no seats anywhere. No problem, I'll just sit awkwardly on the floor the wrong way and stare at these people. Sir, are you okay? One of them asks. My sunglasses were on, so I tried to pretend not to hear them. Why are you staring at me? This chick beckons. I realized my sunglasses are minimum shading, so they could definitely see my eyes just staring into them. Sorry, there is nowhere to sit, I managed to say back. My anxiety at this point is through the roof, so I apologize and find somewhere else to lay down in the terminal. I find a spot near the front of the terminal, near the boarding area and help desk, so if I take a nap, I know I'll be woken up by the line that forms and maybe someone will help me. There's maybe 50 to 60 people near me, all in the rows of seating, and I position myself legs first at them, with my head on my backpack, and I take a nap. I don't know how long I napped for, maybe 10 to 15 minutes. I woke up startled to an extremely loud sound. It sounded like a plane had hit the building from the vibration. Turns out I'd let out the loudest and most pungent butt guff I've ever heard deep out of my insides. I don't move. I have sunglasses on still, and I'd forgotten the encounter with the chick earlier, so I act like I'm asleep. I blasted maybe 10 people directly with my toot, and all 10 of them got up and moved. Immediately. The terminal is shaken up, the laughs from further out are deep, and everyone is looking at me. The cute girls I noticed on my way in are pointing and laughing at me. The airport workers left the stand and are staring at me, talking into their walkie-talkies, laughing. I didn't move until the plane boarded, and in line, everyone was still talking about it, and the staff couldn't look me in the face when I had to go through the desk with my ticket. In short, edibles made me an idiot, and I cleared a row of terminal seating with a pungent gas blast while pretending to be asleep. Sometimes the worst thing that can happen is you do make it, because when you fake it to make it, you still have to fake it to keep it. I'm still in the same career field, faking that I care about numbers and competition and wearing nice clothes. Advice to my younger self, if you have to fake it till you make it, you don't want to make it. When someone asks if I've seen a movie and I lie and say yes to fit in. When they ask me for my favorite part or my opinion on one other part, I'm exposed. Getting an internship and realizing I don't know what the frick I'm doing, and I had to learn a lot real fast before they caught on. My first week sucked at maintaining consistent communication, and my manager, very professionally, reamed me out over the phone, and after he hung up, I cried in an office room for an hour. But I never made that mistake again. Tried to power my way through undiagnosed PTSD. It got 100 times worse. Real recovery does require you to face the difficult situations, but in a specific way. Trying to force yourself to get over it will convince your subconscious that the thing is indeed bad. On the flip side, laughter yoga is the most effective fake it until you make it that I've ever encountered. Pretending to laugh until you feel so ridiculous you really do laugh? It's pretty much an instant mood boost. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.